Alright, and now for something completely different. My thoughts, analysis and reflection on the Thrifter. I mean Drifter, or is it Thrifter? We'll find out. So, we're not playing any Frosthaven today. We are sitting back and taking a in-depth look at one of my recently retired class, the Drifter. It is one of the 6 starting class, so no spoilers here unless you don't want to see the level up cards. But yeah, let's dive into it. I do enjoy playing the Drifter, but it is definitely one of a kind of a class. Before we get into it, as with any guides, thoughts, we need some parameters around which to formulate our thoughts. So here's my preamble. If you've seen this in the Banner Spear video, you can skip. I'll leave a bookmark in the video. But the things we need to take into consideration here, first of all, is that I play on insane difficulty at +3. I like playing with 4 players, whether it is solo or with our friends. And that means the monsters hit harder, there are more of them, and they have more hit points, and they're more elites, which means in turn they're immune to more conditions, and they move more hexes. So many of the things you can do on a lower level difficulty, such as focus firing to kill an enemy before they even get to act, or using CC to immobilize, disarm, stun, even pushing at lower level difficulties could be considered like a CC. They don't really quite work here. In addition, the game tends to last a lot longer because there are more monsters and they have more hit point pool. So tanking becomes more of a relevant point to consider in this type of games, where this is where Drifter comes into play quite a bit, as we'll see. More rounds to play also means the game takes a bit longer. I do find my typical gameplay tends to last between 2 to 3 hours. Maybe that's just because I think a bit slower and my group has a bit more of a thought paralysis. But I definitely find the more players you have, the more communication is required. Even when you're playing solo, the need to piece together different combos and different elements consumption, different rules and different abilities just means it takes a lot longer to get through a game. So as part of this series, I'll definitely be thinking also about things like communication. You know, is it easy to communicate your ideas and your strategy across to the team when you're playing with multiplayers? Plus, as a middle-aged gamer, I do generally have less time to play. So definitely the ability to win a game is very important. As a group, we do not like replaying scenarios. And even when I play solo, I prefer to win outright rather than replaying and taking risks, which means in general, as you've probably seen, I'm more conservative as a player. I tend to minimize risk and play to the primary objective. And I think Frosthaven is a very good game for it. The ability to preview scenarios before you start and examine the monsters, and given your knowledge of the monsters, you're able to pick and choose the cards. So when I talk about the cards in a later part of this video, I won't be telling you exactly what a build is like, because I feel like, yes, I mean, I'll generally cover some of the build ideas, but I will more critically examine the strengths and weaknesses of each card and what they might be good for and what kind of scenarios you might want to take them into, rather than giving you a cookie cutter build. So with the preamble out of the way, let's look at the 4 criteria we'll be judging our character on. Now, in Frosthaven, you typically have 4 different type of objectives, and my criteria will solely be focused on judging a character against their ability to achieve these 4 criteria, which is kill, survive, retreat, and escort. And by these I mean kill. Typically in a scenario you're asked to kill all monsters or a specific monster, so we'll be looking at the character's ability to do that. Survive means the ability to ensure the team survival, to ensure your own survival, because often scenarios also might require you to survive till X rounds. Retreat, I think that's pretty straightforward. Some scenarios require you to escape to a certain X. And finally, escort. And I guess these are the most perhaps complicated missions you'll see in Frosthaven, where halfway through a scenario or at the beginning, you're required to protect an objective or escort a VIP. Before we dive into my thoughts on the Drifter, let's have a look at the Drifter first. So, the Drifter. The Drifter has a simple mechanic of persistent bonuses. It just basically means that if you have a card like Crushing Weight, when you play it, it goes into your active status area, and you put a persistence tracker at the first slot. As the conditions trigger, and they're mandatory, you cannot choose for them not to trigger. If the conditions are met, they will trigger. So in this case, Crushing Weight says on your next 6 melee attacks you get +2 damage, pretty straightforward. And every time it triggers, it moves 1 step forward, and typically it will give you experience point at certain point as you pass from left to right. And additionally, Drifter has abilities to allow you to rewind these tokens. So for example, bottom path for Precision Aim says move the character token on one of your persistent abilities backward 1 slot. So by doing this, you can repeatedly gain EXP as you move the token from left to right. Note that you don't get EXP when you rewind it, but more importantly, you can continue to enjoy this passive bonus, whereas other classes would have this bonus exhausted after certain charges. A good Drifter can keep it around for a very, very long time. So, what do I think about the Drifter then? Well, I think, like I said in my Banosphere video, I almost wish the game designer just imprinted the 3 characteristics of the type of people that would enjoy playing the Drifter. And so rather than having outcast, resourceful, and strong, my thought is Drifter is somebody who should be played by somebody who's a thrifter. A thrifter, steady, and brave are the 3 characteristics I assign to the type of players that I think would enjoy playing the Drifter. So let's have a look at the thrifter. What do I mean by that? So I mean by that, you really need to be somebody who enjoys getting a good deal, getting a good bargain. You are a bit frugal, maybe. You don't spend it all when you have the money. You put away your monthly saving in an account for the long term, for the rainy day. And I think that type of person would enjoy playing the persistence minigame. It doesn't mean you don't use your persistence tokens. It just means that you manage it, and where there are opportunities to do it, you don't necessarily take those opportunities until you're sure perhaps you're in the last room, or this is the critical juncture on which you want to blow your beans. The reason being that it's difficult to talk about Drifter without giving you some context, right? So let's look at the context first. Now, Drifter has two primary attacking persistence cards. One of them is called Crushing Weight, which we've just seen, and the other one is Precision Aim, which allows you to increase your range attack by 1 range and 1 damage. From now on, I'll refer to Precision Aim side as the quote-unquote ranged build and melee for the Crushing Weight build. Even though, in my view, yes, there are some distinct cards for each build, but they do mix and match a bit like the Banosphere's hybrid build that I discussed in my previous class guide video. Now, Drifter's many cards are designed around the fact that you'll have at least one of these cards active from the very beginning, which means that many of the Drifter's attacks, such as Continuous Health, which is attack 2 at range 2, and cards like Sustain Momentum, which is just attack 2, are basically just a basic attack, no pun intended, without one of these being activated. So, if you don't manage the persistence token efficiently and they fall off, you are no better than just a attack 2 basic action bot. In fact, many summons might even do better than you in the long run if you're not able to maintain one of these persistence tokens persistently. So this is what I really mean by the thrifter characteristic. If you're someone who enjoys blowing up the room in a few rounds, you can definitely do that as the drifter, but you will find that your ability to continue to play well will fall off a cliff. And as I said, whilst this is not a big deal on lower level difficulties, on higher level difficulties, it is definitely a problem. For example, the level 7 Algox guard, which you'll quickly encounter on +3 difficulty, has 47 HP. Compare that to a level 1 guard, which has only 12 HP. You can see that the HP increases is not linear. It jumps by quite a big chunk. For example, from 4 to 5, it is only 5 hit points, whilst from 5 to 6 is 10, and from 6 to 7, it is also 10. So the monsters do increase in hit points exponentially at the end, which means that your characters don't scale as well as you get to the higher levels, which means that you're going to hit them more times, which means in Drifter's case, you're going to end up using the persistence token a lot more than if you were playing at a lower difficulty level. So at a higher difficulty level, management of these token trackers become extremely important. And sometimes, just if you think about it, because it triggers on every single attack rather than attack ability, if you were to do multiple attacks in one round, for example with some cards like Destructive Fury, which allows you to attack up to 5 targets at the top there, you would then end up triggering Crushing Weight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in one round, which means that you can't really attack anymore, because next time you attack, whilst you still get a +2 damage bonus, this will be gone, and this is a lost card. You cannot recover this card, at least not easily. And that means for the rest of the game, if you were to make any more melee attack, you are effectively only attacking on +2 with these cards. So, going back to Thrifter, I do think maybe Drifter should have been renamed Thrifter. At this level of difficulty, you must enjoy being frugal and not blow it all up in a few rounds, because again, very important for you and for the team and for your own enjoyment of the class that you do not let your key persistence ability drop off. Which means that Drifter is a steady pair of hands, in the sense that Drifter, with this playstyle of being frugal and thrifty, Drifter will not do anything flashy, because if it does anything flashy, it will probably be just disabled for the rest of the game. So a good Drifter, I find, at this level of difficulty tends to just play reliably and steadily, meaning that you do kind of the same thing round after round, single target, doing reliably somewhere in the region of 4 to 5 damage, and we'll take a look at that in a second. Especially given your attack modifier deck, which we'll take a closer look in a bit, you'll reliably do a single target 4 to 5 damage. It's rare, especially early on for Drifter, to be able to do multiple attacks in one round or doing multi-target attack in one round, precisely because of the lack of ability for you to manage your token. And it also means that from a non-damage dealing perspective, like taking hits or healing, similarly Drifter has defensive and utility type of persistent token cards like Continuous Health and Breakable, which grants you a +2 heal or a shield when you take damage. Again, because of the innate mechanics of the persistence token, it does mean that you will not be doing multiple heals every single round, like some other classes. Similarly, taking damage, whilst you can be very good at taking damage, repeated multiple attack will quickly eat up your tokens and render you unable to take any more damage in future rounds. So once again, when it comes to everything, Drifter needs to be steady. And I think a steady type of person would enjoy that. Again, if you enjoy firework and explosions and translating that onto the board of Frosthaven, you will probably not like Drifter. Whereas if you enjoy the frugal, take my time, doing steady things, almost doing the same thing every single round, but steadily plugging the gap in the team and putting out damage or healing, you will enjoy Drifter. Finally, a brave characteristic. Well, I think most drifters should be brave. Because, number one, you have a large hit point pool. So something I didn't look at while I introduced the character, Drifter, like the Banner Spear, has a 26 hit point pool, or a melee tanky hit point pool, as I like to think of it, in the health progression. Drifter should abuse this fact that Drifter has a large hit point pool, irrespective of whether you're playing a quote-unquote ranged or a melee Drifter. If you're not really using this as a resource, if you're hanging back too much because you are using precision aim, you are really not taking advantage of the Drifter, I think. So Drifter has to be brave. Whether you're playing a melee Drifter or a ranged Drifter, you should take the opportunity to think about, hey, is it my turn to dive in and take some heat off the team? And like I said, on +3 difficulty, it is absolutely necessary to tank. And Drifter is very good at it. And Drifter should abuse the fact that it can take a hit when it needs to. But unlike the Banner Spear, Drifter doesn't have as good initiative. So if we take a quick look at initiative, at level 1, your fastest initiative is 14, followed by 19, followed by 20. And if you look down the list, you never get anything much faster than that. In fact, 14 it is your fastest initiative across all levels, and you never get into the single digit, which means you'll never be able to, for example, beat the Priest, which has an initiative 9 and initiative 8 card. Oops. So it's actually very, very important for the Drifter to take that into account, because whereas the Banner Spear can just always activate initiative 6 card and run in, Drifter cannot do that against enemies like this. And therefore, for Drifter to be effective and use his hit point pool as a resource for the team, Drifter must know when to dive in. Drifter must know when, for example, if you were fighting an enemy, even if you're ranged, right? Drifter must know that, hey, this round, my ally, maybe it's another Drifter, is taking the heat at the moment, right, from the enemy. And I'm doing a range attack from a distance. But if my team requires me to start using my hit point pool as a resource, the Drifter must know when to say, you know what, I cannot guarantee the next round I'll beat the initiative. So if this round my ally is retreating, I must bravely step into the gap here and know that I can survive with my large hit point pool, even if I don't know exactly what the enemy is going to do next round, which is often not something you want to do. Often what you want to do is go fast initiative and see what enemies want to do, and then go in and tank the damage if you need to, whereas Drifter must almost do the other way around. Drifter must almost plan the tanking the round before and step boldly into the gap to defend Drifter's team and allies. And that's brave. Not knowing what's coming up, just stepping forward, that's brave. What else is brave? I often find, because Drifter requires time to set up, almost every single game on the first round, you're going to tell your team, look, I'm not going to do anything this round other than just putting on my gloves and my shoes, because clearly I got out of bed without having my clothes on. You're going to need to take a turn off. And very often I find an effective Drifter is a brave Drifter. Before you even put on anything, any defensive utility or offensive persistence tokens, you say, you know what, I'm going to stand at the front. And it means you will get almost inevitably getting hit on the first round, but you have the hit point pool to take it so that your allies can stand behind you and hide. And in that way, you are using your hit point pool from the very first round, even though you're not doing anything as a resource. Other times, you can even say, look, I am going to just deploy one of my offensive abilities, which is invariably a top half ability, and I'm just going to run in. I'm just going to run in, hold the enemy at a certain point, let them attack you using your hit point pool as a resource, and give you allies the space to set up and do their thing. And once again, a drifter running into the unknown is a good drifter, is a brave drifter that we like to see. Okay, thrifty, steady, brave is my characteristic for the drifter. So let's have a look at how does a drifter perform when it comes to these 4 criteria. So, in terms of kill, like I said, drifter does steady damage. Mostly it's going to be single target in the very earlier levels. When you get to later levels, you will start tapping into the multi-target, mainly because you're going to have cards such as like the Wind, which allows you to effectively rewind your persistence tokens, and cards like Against the Odds, which also does that. Until you get these cards, it's going to be very difficult at +3 difficulty for you to do more than 1, maybe 2 maximum multi-target attacks, or multi-attacks in one round, simply because you cannot easily unwind your token. Maybe now's the right time for us to just briefly talk about it. So, like I said, you typically have Precision Aim or Crushing Weight as your damage dealing persistence ability, and people talk about range and melee build by referring to these 2 cards, I find, almost exclusively. And let's have a look at their ability to manage the persistence minigame going down either ranged or melee typical build. So let's have a look at it at level 1. So you already know from my introduction earlier, you have certain abilities that allows you to rewind the token. So on the left hand side, I've listed all the level 1 cards that's likely to consume a token for each of the build, and on the right hand side are the cards that's likely to rewind a token. So if we start with a range build, Deadly Shot, top half, is possibly an attack you're going to be using repeatedly if you're going down the range route, because this is effectively attack to range 5 with poison, which is a very good action. And that will obviously eat up 1 charge if you're Precision Aim. Continuous Health is attack 2 range 2, but with Precision Aim is attack 3 range 3, and allows you to unwind the token. So this is effectively a neutral attack, so you can see this card's position on both sides, whereas Deadly Shot is only positioned on the left hand side. So Crushing Weight, obviously bottom half, you probably wouldn't be using the top half if you're trying to do a range type of build, although I'll talk about hybrid build as well. Yeah, you can rewind the token with Crushing Weight, so even though if you're playing range, you might think I don't need this, you definitely need this. And so on and so forth. Draining Arrows deserves a bit of special mention because you can target up to 3 targets, so you could eat up all 3 token on Precision Aim in one go. But Draining Arrow also represents a chance to rewind the token, so again, I've sort of included it on both sides. Although most of the time, you probably want to be doing at least 2 target attack to make this action worthwhile. And then finally, Fortitude at level 1 is, it looks like a melee card, but it's actually a range card because you can move a character token forward to make it a range attack, and then it will eat up 1 of your range slot. So this represents sort of 2 use opportunities. So you can see here on the range build, if everything goes according to plan, you could eat 7 charges of your range attack in 1 rest cycle, which means you effectively eat up your Precision Aim. And you only have really 3 unwind opportunities here. So the range build, you can see already, has a big struggle between wanting to continue to attack and use the Precision Aim top versus opportunity to unwind token. In fact, you probably are not going to be using Draining Arrow for the attack. You're probably going to mostly using it for the unwind. And then you're going to probably have not used Fortitude too much as a as just a pure attack, because attack 3 at range with Pierce 2 is actually a pretty good action, so you might occasionally use it for just a melee attack even though you don't get the bonus. So on the range side, assuming you're doing something like this, you're sort of at a 4 use slot per rest cycle type of situation versus 3 rewind. Of course, Draining Arrow is a conditional rewind, so it's not like you always get it. So maybe this is more like 2.5, or this is more like 4. So yes, over 3-4 rest cycles, you're going to get to a pretty difficult spot with this. But range attack definitely has slightly more issues with rewinding and playing the persistence minigame than, say, the melee build. So if we look at the melee build actually has a perfect 4-to-4 ratio at level 1. So you have, and unlike the range build, every single card effectively is attack 4, because you can always use the basic action and use up a token. But if I take a look at the most likely attacks at level 1, Fortitude, Sustain Momentum, Vile Inheritance, and Bloodletting, you also have 4 equally very available chances to rewind your token. In the bottom half, Precision Aim, Sustain Momentum's a neutral card, Draining Arrow we talked about, and Bloodletting. If you kill, you get a rewind. So you can see already on just from the level 1 cards, the minigame is much easier to play at a melee side than it is at range side, because of the chance to eat up tokens quickly. And I guess this goes back to my theme of being a thrifty, frugal drifter. Just because you can do this 3 attacks at range 3 attack 2 with model and effectively make sure the entire team's wearing leather armor whenever you open a door, doesn't mean you should. And that's something to take into account when you think about the drifter. And as you level up, you can see here, as you level up, this is sort of maybe a typical range build I find. You know, level 2, level 3, you don't really get any more chances of unwinding a token. In fact, the level 3 card, Fierce Barrage, on the bottom half, increasing the target by 1 means you eat through your precision aim much faster, because every single attack, remember, that's increased because of the extra target, will also go through one of your precision aim tokens. So Deadly Shot will eat up 2 precision aim tokens and 1 Fierce Barrage token. So in fact, at level 3, yes, you do get a bit of a power increase, but it is a dangerous game. And in fact, I sometimes find just because you have Fierce Barrage, access to Fierce Barrage at level 3, doesn't mean you want to use it right away. It is only until level 4 do you get a conditional unwind in the shape of Gift of the Prey, but that also requires you to kill enemy. And of course, as you level up more and more on the range side, you do get more and more chances of unwinding your token. In particular, like the Wind, I find is a very, very good way of unwinding your token on a 4-player game, simply because you have that many allies. But until then, ranged build will persistently have this issue of dealing with the persistence minigame, whereas melee side doesn't have quite that problem. You starting already at, the level 2 card, Shockwave, is not an attack, so you don't necessarily need to trigger the melee card. I find at level 3 I take Dual Bow. We'll talk about that more in a second, but really it's at level 4 you really have access to another good melee attack that will eat your token, but thankfully it is a neutral card in terms of token unwind. And then thereafter, almost every other level, you will have a chance to rewind tokens on your cards. So overall, the melee side has a much easier time in playing the persistence minigame than the range side, even at level 1. But irrespective of which side of the build you want to go down, Drifter definitely struggles with multiple target attack and multi-attack in one round. And like I said, no matter what you're doing, you're really looking at mostly doing 4 damage. I think 4 is almost the key number for the Drifter. And I guess that in a way makes communication much easier when you're playing with your team, because your team just knows that you'll do 4 damage. The attack modifier, unfortunately for Drifter, just adds to that story. It's very unexciting. What do I mean by that? Let's take a quick look at the attack modifier. So this is the final shape of the deck, and what I'm doing here is vertical cards are cards you'll be taking out, and horizontal cards are the cards you'll be adding in. So if I look at the final shape of your deck, if you took all of these perks, you'll end up with 2-1 and a miss, and these are really your only negative cards. So you might be thinking, hey, that's pretty good. I don't have to worry about -2s. But equally, you're not getting that many exciting cards. So you still have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros in the deck. These are zeros, so even though they're rolling and these are zeros, if you have advantage and this is your last card you draw advantage, you effectively have a 0. And you have these zeros, you have 2 more zeros here. You have a lot of zeros in your deck. And you have a lot of 1s. And these zeros, they don't add to your damage, right? These are just 0. It's not like the Blink Blades deck that allows you to do a 0, but it is a +2 later on. This is 0 +2. Push 2, Pierce 3, there's only 2 of them. You're not really fishing for these, 33 card attack modifier deck. Healing, sure, is good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not extra damage. And then these ones, if anything, they're taking out your +1s to give you a chance to rewind your token. And they're not extra damages. So most of the time, I find if you're playing the Drifter, you're drawing either a +1. That card has decided to leave us permanently. Let's replace them. You're either... wow. Talk about unexciting. They're literally flying off the shelf here. You're actually mostly drawing +1s, I find, as the Drifter, or +0s. Which means, once again, I go back to the idea that you're mostly doing steady damage between 4 to 5. Mostly single target. Nothing to fish for in an attack modifier deck. You're not really fishing for these +3. You're not really fishing for these +2 just because this is 2 cards out of 33 cards. The only thing you could be potentially fishing for is these +2 immobilize, but again, the deck is so big. But +3, yes, there's 1 out of 33 cards. The deck is so big, I often find, unlike with like Blink Blade or Deathwalker, once you've drawn through half of your deck, you kind of can guess when something might be coming up. The Drifter, unless you have consistent strengthening, which you don't get access to, at least not real strengthening, until much later in the shape of this level 9 cards, it's very difficult for you to get through your deck. So most often you're not fishing for anything. Most often you are just looking to do 4 to 5 damage. Which makes Drifter, like I said, a steady damage dealer. And then between the melee and ranged, they each have their strengths and weaknesses. The melee definitely struggles against high retaliating enemies. So I'm thinking about Flaming Blade Spinner, for example. I'm thinking about some of the Algox enemies that has very high retaliate on high difficulty levels. You're going to struggle to go up against them. But this is where your bravery comes in. Often, if you're playing with a group of all melee characters, which is I find more often than not in Frosthaven, for example, you're playing with a Banner Spear, a melee Banner Spear, a melee Blink Blade. Who better than you to use your hit point pool to go up and do that first hit and take that first retaliate damage? So even though the melee do struggle against high retaliating enemies, often it's better for you to go and do that and be brave and take that damage so that you open up the opportunity for your team to make the kill and they then won't take the retaliate damage. Remember, you have high hit point pool, so you should really be doing that. The ranged on the other side struggles against shielded enemies already. You can tell from the ranged card, you only add extra damage. The range is nice, gives you more flexibility. But in terms of pure damage output, which is very important on +3 difficulty, you only get 1 damage here, whereas you get 2 from crushing weight. It does mean when you draw a crit, this is 4 damage and this is 2 damage added, right? So, if you have teammate that's blessing you, you're just going to do less damage. And as a result, the ranged side definitely just struggles against shields. In particular, also at level 1, in order to use this card as a range attack, you're going to need to eat 2 tokens, which you're not wanting to do that very often. Whereas this naturally becomes attack 5, range Pierce 2. So yeah, the melee side definitely do better against shield, whereas the range side will struggle against shields. So, having said all of that, I'm going to give a 3 out of 5 for the ability for the Drifter to kill stuff. Drifter, it is just average. Not very exciting, but it's a steady warcross. Your team will appreciate you because you're pretty steady. Like if the enemy has 4 hit points left, your team will know that you can finish the job. If the enemy has high retaliate, your team can count on you to step into the breach and take that first retaliate 5 hit to open up more opportunities for the team because you have the high hit point pool. Which then takes us to survivability. Now, I already talked about Drifter's high hit point pool, and you definitely should be using that. Even if you're playing the range side, I would highly advise you, and I'll talk about this when we get to the cards, to do few range attacks, but then also go in, take some damage, use some of your melee cards, and do a mixed type of Drifter. Don't just stand at the back and shoot something from a range 5 away. So, you do have a good hit point pool, which means anything that allows you to continue to replenish that hit point pool is going to be very good. And I guess now I think we should talk about this particular card called Continuous Health, and also this card Unbreakable. I think there's a bit of a debate around whether preventative damage in the bottom side of Unbreakable is better than reactive healing. I think both of them have their uses. Earlier level, Unbreakable, the preventative damage side, is going to be more useful, even though this theoretically only represents 6 preventative damage if you are not rewinding your token. But of course you will be rewinding your token, so this will just effectively be a -1 damage from all source of attack, assuming you don't burn up this too quickly. Whereas this theoretically represents 12 hit points. But I find earlier on, your Unbreakable is going to be much, much better than your Continuous Health. Purely because at +3 difficulty, you're going to start with a level 4 Algox. And the level 4 Algox hit for 6. Whereas a level 1 Drifter has only 10 hit points. So if you have 2 of these, you're going to be dead in 2 hits. So irrespective of whether you have 10 hit point or 8 hit point, a level 1 Algox almost means exactly the same to you. Whereas, if you had this deployed, you have a shield, which means that these 2 hits are gonna be like 5 damage each, and with a heater shield, maybe a leather armor that you've purchased from the beginning of the game, this will probably do like, first attack might be for 6, minus a shield is 5, minus your heater shield will be 4, and because you have leather armor, you can guarantee not to get critted, so you're probably taking like a 4 and a 5 damage. So having this permanent shield with 2 charges taken will actually allow you to, most of the time, with a bit of defensive item purchased, survive 2 of these hits. Whereas this wouldn't, because of course your healing doesn't really kick in until it's back to your turn. So I definitely find earlier on, your Unbreakable is going to be much better at tanking, and your later on will have a much larger hit point pool, because if you go to level 7, yes, the Algox Guard hits much harder at 7 hit point, but it doesn't scale as fast, right, as your hit point pool. Then you can really start to abuse your hit point pool by using Continuous Health. And actually, one of the key things I like to do, perhaps, is in the beginning of the game, you might have quite a lot of hit points. Like I said, let's say you're living the level 9 life, you have 26 hit point. Even against this kind of setup, where you have, maybe 2 level 7 elites, you can do something like, hey, first round, I'm gonna just deploy Crushing Weight, move up, take 2 hits, next round I can use my Continuous Health bottom side and heal myself with something. And because of the Continuous Health, any type of healing is really good. Any type of item that heals is really good. I'm strictly looking at, I'll talk about item in a second, Amulet of Life. This continuous healing turns this into a heal 3 effectively. So Healing items plays really well with your large hit point pool, with your continuous health, and you have access to shield early on. You have good self-healing, basically. But even with either of these cards, and you can use both of them if you really want to tank, you cannot tank continuously. Even though the card is called continuous health, you cannot tank continuously on higher level difficulty, because monsters just hit too hard for you to be able to do that. And in particular, if you get hit too many times, you get into the position where you are having to sacrifice your rewind to plugging them into defensive persistence abilities rather than using for offense. So yeah, sure, you can tank, but if you tank too many hits in one go, you're going to struggle to maintain the shield or maintain the healing. And in fact, many of your rewind abilities, like continuous health, top half if you're playing the melee, or if you're playing range, you might be using sustain momentum. Sorry, if you're using range, you might be using continuous health, and if you're going melee, you might be using sustain momentum. Many of your rewind is tied to attacks or movement, I find typically, like bloodletting, for example, or later on you have gifted prey, and they will naturally just eat one of your charges. So they're not really rewind so much, they're net zero cards. Maybe Drifter is the climate warrior, net zero. Whereas you're going to struggle to find opportunities to rewind your defensive abilities. So if you're eating up too many hits, you're going to run out of your defensive card, and then you can't tank anymore. So you go from someone who's very good at tanking to, if you tank too many hits, to no longer be able to tank at all. So again, Drifter is one of those funny characters that you have a large hit point pool, you can tank very well with your defensive cards, but you can only tank so many hits in one rest cycle. You almost want to say, look guys, I can tank for a little bit, I can tank for maybe for 3 or 4 hits, and then I need to pull back. I need to not tank, I need somebody else to tank. That makes Drifter a bit of a funny tank, and I think in terms of survivability, I will give Drifter a 3 out of 5 again. Simply because, yes, you can tank, but you can't tank. You can't tank continuously, not like some other characters. And you might be thinking, well, Drifter has a 12 cards hand, right? This is something I didn't talk about, which I wanted to cover in the survivability section. Yes, Drifter have 12 cards, but you'll very often be deploying at least 1, but most likely 2, maybe even 3 of these persistence tokens to give yourself more options. So effectively, most of the time you're playing more like a 10 card character after the first round. So you might be thinking, oh, I have 12 cards, I can just burn cards. I actually find that Drifter cannot burn too many cards. Maybe you can burn 1 through bad planning, but if you were to burn 2 or more cards early on, your stamina actually does not sustain for that long. You'll quickly run out of options because you'll quickly be deciding between some of the more powerful cards and cards that allows you to rewind tokens. If you get to that stage, Drifter is very, very hard to play. You are at risk of your persistence token dropping off, and then your power level drops off precipitously. So, Drifter, okay tank. Often, Drifter is the good tank earlier in the game, and then Drifter needs a bit of a rest and a breather, and then Drifter can tank again. It's almost like Drifter is getting winded from tanking. So, you might be thinking, well, average at killing, average at surviving. What is a Drifter good for? Well, a Drifter is good at sprinting. Drifter is a good runner. And that predominantly comes from this card. Sustain momentum bottom half. So it says on your next 6 moves, add 2 movements. Because of this, every single card Drifter has is effectively a move 4. Many cards are move 6, like Deadly Shot. Cards like No Remorse becomes a move 9. Combining that with a little bit of movement boots, you quickly get to move 10 or 11 very easily. And unlike the defensive and offensive persistence cards, often you are using the movement on sustain momentum for a particular purpose, and you don't mind it dropping off at some point. For example, if you're trying to escape a certain room, a certain scenario, you'll probably be deploying this closer to the escaping time, right? You might have to fight through some enemies, so you're probably not deploying this in your first rest cycle. Then you deploy in your second or your third rest cycle, and then you quickly utilize this to get out of the way. So Drifter is a very, very good sprint runner, and Drifter is also a very good marathon runner, because if you wanted to, you could of course sync your rewind into sustained momentum. I've not found that I've needed to do that much in Frosthaven scenarios, but certainly if you wanted to do that, Drifter could be consistently and moving for every single run, if you wanted to. It does mean Drifter is somewhat penalized then for not having innate jump. There is technically a jump card in Drifter's arsenal, and that card is Like the Wind top half. It says immediately after your next heals, you can perform move 3 jump. I wish this card said immediately after your next heals abilities, the targeted character gets to move 3 jump. I think that would be much more fairer for a top half persistent ability like this, but alas, it's not meant to be. So you do technically have jump, although I struggle to think, I mean, there are some uses for this for pure supporting Drifter, because support Drifter have the problem of healings often being on the bottom half of your card. So for example, your level 2 card Ever Forward is one of the probably better heal in the game, but is on the bottom, and then you have cards like Prudent Prep, which is also a heal on the bottom. So most often you find that you're going to be choosing between healing and moving if you are focused on healing as a Drifter, and this card allows you to move and heal, so that gives you some jump. And of course, if you combine that with sustained momentum, you could be jumping for 5 every time you heal, which is kind of crazy. But again, I often find that problem can just be solved with a pair of jump boots, which is one of the starting items. So if you really wanted to jump, you could just do that. Although I often find that's not really an issue. But Drifter does get penalized with not having innate jump. You know, no way of easily accessing jump, and you can't even enhance, unfortunately, Deadly Shot bottom half with a jump. So, you know, unless you're really leaning to the supporting Drifter, you're going to find jumping, if you want to jump every round, to be an issue. So if you have obstacles, loads of hazardous terrains, Drifter don't do very well in those scenarios. But this is a roller coaster, right? You do get, Drifter does like moving, because you often get some side benefits when you move. So if I look at the level 1 card, you have cards like Vile Assault, which gives you 2 extra hit points when you move. You have cards like Draining Arrows, which allows you to rewind a token if you're exactly next to one enemy when you move. So Drifter does like moving, and even later on, you're going to get access to cards. I mean, Precision Aim bottom half is also one of those type of cards, but like Shockwave gives you a shield, or Gift of Prey allows you to rewind a token, or Breakthrough allows you to rewind a token, or Survivalist allows you to loot and heal. There are many cards in your arsenal that favors you moving every round because you are going to get some benefit from moving. And that's kind of part of what makes Drifter a good mover. Not only are you a really good sprint and marathon runner, you also enjoy moving. So I'll give Drifter 4 for retreat. You can definitely run across the room, and I've done that many times, right? If you have like not only if you can just escape, but like if you start here, you open a door and there's a cannon on the other side of the room, the Drifter can quickly cover this distance and block the cannon from attacking the rest of your team. If there's a summoner here, and Drifter can quickly get there and plug the gap, so the summoner can only summon 1 summons rather than 2 this round, Drifter is very good at doing something like this. It's just if there's a few obstacles, few hazardous terrain in the way, Drifter is going to struggle with that. So 4 out of 5, pretty above average, pretty good, but not the best. Okay, finally, what about escort missions? Now unfortunately, Drifter has no way of moving Drifter's allies. I wish, like I said, Like the Wind was designed like that, and I think that would be a pretty fair card. For level 7, especially you're competing against an ending fight. So I wish that was the case, but Drifter has no innate ways of moving any allies, unlike the Bandit Spear. What about protecting Drifter? Well, Drifter can protect his allies, but Drifter mostly excels in healing through cards like Continuous Health, bottom half combined with cards like bottom half of Arrow Forward, top half of Chunk of Flesh. There's definitely healing here, and Drifter is good at healing because every single heal is effectively going to be 3 to 4, sometimes even more with cards like Consume Stamina. But healing means you're going to get hit first. So if you're putting your escort, your objective, your VIP in harm's way, hoping that they will survive, and then you can top them up, is often just not good enough. What I mean by that is because whilst your characters and your allies tend to have some kind of defensive ability other than just their hit point, for example, you can carry shields, you can wear leather armors, your VIPs tend not to have that luxury. So if they get hit, they're trading their hit point very inefficiently, whereas your team can trade your hit point much more efficiently. So healing a VIP and objectives is often not the best way to protect them, because you are not only using up your persistence for somebody who's trading their hit point very badly, you're also committing actions to healing that again is inefficient versus healing your team. So when it comes to escorting, you're much rather that you are taking the damage rather than the objective for the VIP taking damage. But like I said, this leans into Drifter's inability to tank easily, because in order for you to tank, you need to get in front of the VIP consistently to shield the VIP, and doing that too many times is difficult. Not necessarily because Drifter doesn't have the movement, but the positioning is just awkward, because one, Drifter has to, the round before, boldly step into the unknown, which is always scary on higher level difficulties. But also, your healing often requires allies to be in a certain position for your healing to go off. For example, Chunk of Flesh is a very good card. It will be healing you for 4 if you have continuous health, but it requires the target of your heal to be right next to you, because it is only range 1. Consume Stamina is a great piece of healing with your precision aim. This could be attack 3, and this could be a heal 3 plus 2 with continuous health. This could be a heal 5, but it requires you to have attacked somebody first. Otherwise, the heal would just be for 2. And your target has to be within range 4 of you, which limits your options. I mean, range 4 is a big range, but it does sometimes limit where you could be, especially if you're trying to play the rear guard action to your VIP. Your VIP could just be stepping out of your range quite quickly, and 21 initiative is just not quick enough to always beat what you want to do here. Again, level 9 card is a similar theme. This could be attack 5, range 5, and heal 4, but the allies again has to be next to the enemy. So Drifter has some pretty clutch team healing. I've often find that Drifter has the ability to, if planned correctly, top off your escorted VIP or objective just long enough for them to survive the last couple of rounds in a very heated battle. But Drifter is definitely not good at proactively protecting or escorting the ally or the VIP. And the healing has a little bit of a resistance built in. It is not simple as, like, again, Banner Spears at all cost heal, which can heal anybody so long as they're within line of sight. Drifter can apply positive conditions like ward. Well, rather I should say that's probably that is the only positive condition Drifter could apply through top cards of Survivalist. But the problem is, and this is a theme I'll talk about when I come to talk about the cards, this is a top action. If this was a bottom action, this card would be absolutely amazing. The fact that this is a top action makes it drop off in value, because whilst you could pull off a combo with Ever Forward and Survivalist, which allows you to ward 3 of your targets immediately within range 3 at the start of the game, and that's a pretty good opening if you're taking survivalist, you do end up with a problem of, okay, but then when am I deploying my precision aim or my crushing weight? If you're doing like survivalist ever forward plus precision aim crushing weight the next round, then you're kind of falling behind quite a lot. You know, you're not moving, you're not attacking. Yes, you are healing, and you could, for example, do top half of precision aim, bottom half of crushing weight, put out another heal, rewind a token, put out another ward. You are technically healing 4 targets across 2 rounds, but on higher level difficulties, yes, healing is good to do, but healing should not be the primary thing you do, because while you're healing, your team's getting hammered by these crazy Algoxes who attack at 7 hit points. And if you're not denting some of their hit points, you're never going to kill them, and you end up falling behind over the long term. So yes, the potential to ward does make Drifter a very good healer and a supporter, but you might be giving too much because you're sacrificing a whole round for that setup. So I'll give Drifter 2 for escort. I think it would have been 1 if it wasn't for the fact that Drifter can ward. And some scenarios, absolutely, ward will come in clutch, especially ward on higher level difficulties just do much more, right? If you think about it, ward against Algox Guard is reducing 4 HP damage at level 7, whereas at level 3, at level 2 is only reducing 2. So, sorry, 3 damage. So, you know, on higher levels, the ward is going to do more and more. And it's amazing condition to apply, but yeah, if you're going to do that, you're going to fall behind. So that's, and you're not moving, which is the other problem. So that's why I say 2-star for escort. Okay, so that's a very long video already, 56 minutes about my thought, but I think overall, I would just re-emphasize Drifter, play to your strength of your hit point pool and be brave, but you're not flashy, and you're probably not going to be enjoyed by somebody who plays a flashy type of, has a flashy type of personality. So, let's look at the cards then. I think level 1 cards, Crushing Weight and VE Precision Aim. Let's talk briefly about range and melee build. Now, I know there are a lot of debate around which one is more effective later on, which one is more effective early on. I think no matter what you do, you should start as a melee drifter. I think melee drifter definitely is slightly harder to play in some sense because precision aim with extra range just gives you more positional abilities, and that's really cool as a drifter. But at higher level difficulties, I'd recommend you start using crushing weight, at least on the earlier levels, because like I said, on the range side just generally has slightly more difficulty in terms of rewinding tokens, whereas it's just a bit easier for the melee to rewind tokens, but more so than that, the melee side just does more damage, and more damage is just king earlier on. As you level up, the range side will really comes in on its own, and what the range side gives you in the lack of 1 damage is the ability to be more flexible. Extra range means you can be in more awkward positions and still be helping out the team. It also means that you have more positional abilities you have more positional space, more positional space potential. Whereas the melee guy, you have to be running into an enemy, and sometimes that's ill-advised. I can think of many places. For example, if you're opening a door, a melee drifter will just often end up having the daunting choice of running into the room and getting hit on all sides in order to be effective, or staying back and just wasting a turn. Whereas the range side, with this +1 range, with cards like Deadly Shot, which allows you to reach 5 hexes, it just means you have more options. Especially in a 4-player game, I found the range really excels in places where you're playing with like a mass skeleton Bone Shaper. You know, the Bone Shaper summons will just block the path, especially if I think about scenario 1, a Tongue in Flame, the narrow corridor, which is the bane of every party on 4 players. You don't care about that. With precision aim set up, you can just shoot across all of your allies and still hit the enemy. So, absolutely precision aim is, I find precision aim is probably just a more fun a more flexible way of playing the drifter. But like I said earlier on, crushing weight is absolutely more beneficial for the group because of the extra damage. Now, having said that, you should take both cards no matter what build you're doing, to be honest, because both sides of the bottom half of the cards are really good. Precision aim is a guaranteed way. It is just a move too, so it feels like you're just doing a basic move, but it is a guaranteed way of rewinding a token, which I much more value. So, you know, if I was playing the melee build, if I were to choose between precision aim and draining arrow, which is a move 3, is better move, but has a condition attached to rewinding the token, even though it's not a onerous condition, precision aim I would take more than draining arrow unless I really care about that extra movement, just because the guaranteed way of rewinding a token is just great. And same on the crushing weight side, the bottom side. Heal 2, range 2 is always a good action. I talked about how good Drifter is at healing, in particular self-healing. I mean, range 2 often is just a self-heal. But again, the guaranteed ability to rewind a token is amazing. And I think if you don't look at the top side of the cards, you look at the bottom side, you think about how crushing weight is complementing precision aim and precision aim is complementing crushing weight. You can kind of actually see a little theme here. Maybe this is intentional, but I would like to think this was intentional design. Crushing weight, being the melee build, likes to move because you have to get close to hit enemy. And precision aim, bottom side, is a perfect complement. It's not a big move. It can be increased to a big move with sustained momentum, but it is a move. And like I said, the melee drifter needs to move and likes to move. And move 2 often is just good enough. And it rewinds your token. That's perfect. Whereas, I think if you're playing the range drifter, you should absolutely also deploy continuous health, because you'll find you're going to naturally have downtimes because you cannot always be using your range attack cards. For example, right, if you think about how this thing works, the way you manage your token is, you know, if you were to do like a multi-target attack, obviously you can't have your token here unless you say, I just want to give up on my attack now. And having a token here is also kind of precarious, right? Because if you were to do, let's say, just even one attack, then you're here. Then you know next turn you cannot do any more attacks unless you have guaranteed way of rewinding your token. So, cards like Crushing Weight will perfectly complement that because it allows you a guaranteed way to rewind your token and continue attack. But then to get the maximum out of this, you should therefore have continuous health deployed. So I find like if you're playing the ranged drifter, you often want to have more than just precision aim deployed, and you probably just naturally want that, but definitely continuous health is going to be your partner in crime, even though continuous health has a good top attack that also allows you to rewind a token. And this is where I think for precision aim type of drifter, maybe continuous health is a card that come in on the next rest cycle, so you might be using it in the beginning for the neutral attack, but later on you can deploy the bottom side for the heal. Whereas the melee side, you know, you have more ability to move your token around, and you just enjoy moving more. But I would say, I guess, if I take a big step back, I guess this sounds a bit muddled. I guess what I'm really trying to say is, if you're playing the melee guy, you need to move. So any type of move, I will value just a little bit higher, whereas with the extra range, you just need to move less. So any type of static ability like this, I will value a bit higher. But I think irrespective of which side you're playing, you should be taking the other side into the battle with you. Speaking of the supporting cards, then let's look at this next set of 2 persistence token cards, which are the defensive cards. Now, I've compared earlier between cards like Unbreakable, bottom half, and Continuous Health, bottom half. I think, like I said, both of them have their uses. I would say, more importantly, Continuous Health will play a key cornerstone to your drifter, no matter what type of drifter you're playing, whether you're range or melee. Just simply because drifter has really good healing abilities. I think it's hard for me to re-emphasize this. And Drifter has large hit point pool. Drifter plays really well in abusing that hit point pool, and continuous health really is that piece of puzzle. So I think whether you're playing, if you're playing range, you're definitely taking continuous health for the top half, but you should still also experiment with the bottom half of continuous health, because even if you're playing ranged, you still should abuse your hit point pool as a resource for the team. And then maybe this is where I should stop and just quickly talk about these items. In particular, any item like Amulet of Life, which if you combine it with Renewing Potion, will allow you to heal yourself for 6. That's right, 6 in one round with continuous health. And in fact, I think if we did a small analysis of the effective hit point you can recover in one rest cycle, so let's count it, right? At level 1, you have 5 from Remorse, no remorse if you took continuous health. You have 4 from Prudent Prep, so that's 9. You have 4 more from Vile Assault, so that's 13. And these, I'm just counting self heals. And you have, if you bought Amulet of Life at the beginning, you have 3 more, so that's 16. And if you long rest it, that's 20. So if you think about it, and if you manage to run continuous health, you actually have 20 effective hit points you can go through just from the level 1 cards, and this only improves as you level up. So this is, I guess, what I really mean by the large hit point pool as a resource of the Drifter. You really need to use that, and in fact I would say if you're not going through like a 10 hit point in a rest cycle, you are not really taking advantage of Drifter's incredible ability to heal itself like this. Again, in terms of tanking, Drifter cannot tank continuously. It can't just be the main tank for the entire game, because you just get through this so quickly that it becomes useless. But if you can manage it, you can play the mini game, you will find that Drifter has such a large hit point pool that would be a shame not to use it. The other thing to mention about continuous health is it is effectively a heal for every time you long rest. Now of course, remember you can always choose not to rest. And I think this is where you can always choose not to heal, perhaps I should say. And I think this is where Unbreakable falls off over a longer period of time, because if you think about it, Unbreakable is an uncontrolled type of persistence loss, because yes, you can rewind it, but you can't always control how many attacks you're receiving. For example, if you're fighting against the skeleton, the living bones, it can attack you for 3 times in one round, or it can attack you for once. So you could just be eating through this token a lot quicker, and I often had those experiences where you deploy the shield and it works great until it doesn't, because you all of a sudden get a surprise attack of 3 times from someone out of nowhere and you just did ease through the shields. Whereas with continuous health, you always have ability to control how quickly you ease through the token, and you're okay with that because you have the large hit point pool. And the other thing to mention, like I say, with continuous health, if you have persistence, which allows you to long rest and rewind the token, and you should absolutely be long resting most of the time, this is effectively a permanent heal for, because you could, because this is whenever you long rest, or even if this is on the last slot, you can always rewind it and then heal yourself for 4. So if every long rest is heal 4, again, it just adds to your ability to use tap into your health pool, like a blood mage. And of course, sometimes it is important to deploy both of them. I have done that. Sometimes I deploy continuous health with bottom half a chunk of flesh, so you have 2 shield and the ability to heal extra 2 HP every time you heal, just for you to get through a scenario. So don't be afraid if you are ever in a scenario where you do need to tank, to say, you know what, rather than losing a card to take damage, right, because that sucks, deploy your shield and deploy your healing, or deploy your shield first and then later on deploy your healing once the shield is fallen off. That's okay. I mean, that's what you're good for, right? Top half of Unbreakable, I'm not going to talk too much. I don't value this too much as a action. I think maybe earlier on, if you're really struggling as the ranged type of Drifter, you might be bringing this in just to rewind some tokens. But I think the problem for this card I find really is move the character token on 2 of your abilities backward 1 slot. Whereas I think if it just said move the character token backward 1 slot 2 times, I will value this much more. Because often I find it's not so much that I'm eating through all of my ability tokens too quickly, is that I'm eating through a particular token too quickly, especially with cards like Precision Aim. And I think that will be one change I will make to the card, just to give it a bit more of a relevance. But anyway, Unbreakable, very good early on, because you just need a shield to survive. Later on, it will drop off, and it will drop off quite precipitously against Continuous Health's bottom ability. The next two persistence abilities are your utility cards, the way I think about it. Now, Relentless is very similar. It's almost have the same initiative as Unbreakable and the same top ability, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. The bottom side, it has its uses. It's kind of good against high shielded, which is a problem for Drifter as a range side more generally. Against high shielded, low hit point enemies, it is kind of like 12 pure damage. But again, this card has the same problem as Unbreakable, which is it is uncontrolled persistence eating. So like I said, to be a real thrifter, you want to be able to manage your persistence minigame more efficiently, and Relentless and Unbreakable both represent inefficient management of a minigame. Right, if you think about it, you can always choose not to attack, you can always choose not to heal, you can always choose not to move, but you cannot choose not to take hit if you're in a position to take hit. And every time you take hit, even if you know, like even with Unbreakable, you take so much hit you have to lose a card, this shield still triggers. And even if you are taking damage from someone you don't want this to be triggering, for example, maybe you set this up because you want the priest to be getting the retaliate damage because it has shields. But then like the Algok's card runs up to you unexpectedly and hits you, and 2 damage against Algok's card is 47 hit point, doesn't really mean anything. I think even at like level 4, which is earlier on, if you're level 1 on +3, you're playing against level 4 Algok's card, you know, you kind of want to be sinking that pure damage against the priest with the shield 2, rather than the Algok's card with 22 hit point. You sometimes you can't control that. And I think that's where Relentless really drops off. I would bring in occasionally in certain scenarios where I absolutely have to have this in order to deal with some enemies. In particular, if I'm playing ranged, I think actually this plays really well with the range build rather than instead of Unbreakable. Because even though you're ranged, like I said, you still want to abuse your hit point pool. And if you just want to add more damage into the party, this could be a pretty good setup into like later rest cycles when you need more and more time to rewind your token. But you can still go forward, do some melee hits, right, absorb some damage, and then still use this card to help you do output more and more damage. And in the meantime, the top side could still just be helpful for the rewind token. So I actually find if I was playing ranged, if I wanted to play ranged Drifter from level 1, not that I like to do that, but even like later on, before I get to the real payoff card with the rewind ability like Gift of the Prey, I actually find Relentless can be quite a good companion to your ranged damage build. Although like I said, I personally prefer to be healing as a secondary job for my Drifter rather than just doing retaliate damage. But it's a complement to you tapping your hit point as your resource. Sustained momentum, I think I talked about the bottom half already, I don't need to talk too much. One thing to be mindful of is any ground type of movement from like Banner Spear also triggers this. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm keeping track of everything, but then your Banner Spear starts moving you, of course you don't have to move, you can just tell them I don't want to move. But if they do move you, you also trigger this. So that's something to be mindful of. But the top half of sustained momentum, I just find this very good. Remember, with cards like Continuing Health and Sustained Momentum, you don't have to do the attack because of this line. You can rewind your token without doing the attack. So, yeah, Sustained Momentum is great. Bring it with you to the melee build. I sometimes even bring it with me to the ranged build, just because I sometimes need the move, and until I need to deploy the move, which is often not in the first rest cycle, in the meantime, I have the ability to go forward and bonk something and rewind one of my range attack tokens. So, you know, I would say if you're playing range, don't, like I said earlier, you don't have to think purely about all I'm doing is doing a range attack. You should think more in the line of, I'll do some range attack, maximize my efficiency. Once my precision aim gets to a slightly more precarious position, I should go forward, do some tanking, use my hit point pool, maybe do a bit of healing, do a bit of retaliate damage, and then bring cards like these in for a bit of a bonk and the rewind of a token. So yeah, I think almost these two sets of cards kind of mirror each other. Unbreakable and Relentless, situationally good, and sustain momentum and continuous health. I just find this always good. Next three cards I think are my categories of other cards that can conditionally rewind your tokens. And it would go from the right hand side, which is the most likely chance of you rewind your token, to the left hand side where you have to do more work to rewind your token. So Draining Arrows, top half I think we talked about. If you don't have precision aim up, I find it's actually very difficult to acquire 3 targets at range 2 for this to happen. If you have precision aim up, this basically says, hey, everyone is wearing leather armor this round. Most likely you, since you're going to be in the middle of an enemy doing 3 attacks. But as I said before, be careful, because if you do too many attacks, you're going to ease through your precision aim too quickly, and then you become slightly useless for the rest of the game. Now, the bottom side I think is really good. Just purely because that moving 3 and getting adjacent to exactly 1 enemy is not a difficult condition to achieve, even on 4-player. So if you think about a situation where you have like multiple enemies that's all standing like this or something, or like this even, you know, there are actually many places you can be for that to trigger. So you can go here, 1, 1, 2, 3 will get you here, 1, 2 will get you here, and if you're here, 1, 2, 3 will get you there, right? 1, 2, 3. So there are quite a lot of positions, even with a very bunched up enemy like this, where you can go and rewind your token. And especially, this is kind of again playing to the theme of what you want to do anyway. You don't want to be like, you know, there's a bunch of enemies like this, you don't want to be here. You are not a, hey, I can take 3 hits and feel good about myself type of character. Like I said when I talked about tanking, if you take 3 hits, you're eating 3 of your tokens. And then you are in a very precarious position of having to rewind this more often. And then you have to balance that between your attack and your defense. Drifter is kind of like an enemy. Drifter is the kind of character that likes to tank on the peripherals with the help of maybe another ally, right? So with this type of characters, enemies formation, you almost want to split it up a bit so that one of your ally, maybe a banner spear, can tank one side, and you can tank the other side. Maybe you can tank 2 of the side here and 1 the other side here. Moving your defensive tokens 2 steps forward is just much more manageable in 1 round than moving it 3 steps forward. You just put yourself in too much a precarious position, right? Because if you think about it, you know, taking 2 hit means you can probably take another 2 hit, whereas taking 3 hit, you can't take another 3 hit. And you don't often get to kill an enemy in 1 round on +3 difficulty. So that's what I really mean by this weird dynamic of 3 is kind of a weird position for you to be when you eat through your tokens, whereas 2 is a, hey, is an okay position. I can plan around that. So Draining Arrow's bottom half actually works quite well for what you're trying to do as a drifter anyway. So I often find this condition is not too restrictive. And like I said, top half is good. If you're playing the range build, just be careful you don't eat too many tokens. But I think this card will definitely come into both the melee and the range build. Bloodletting, slightly more harder work, and I think this is one of those first cards I would say is other than these two, although like I said they play into each other's build as well. But I think Bloodletting is definitely one of those cards that's purely coming in for the melee build. I mean, the bottom half attack 1 wound, it is a bottom side attack, but if you're not adding +2 damage to this is just not that impressive. Whilst the top half, because the condition, I mean, unlike, it does more damage than sustained momentum, but unlike sustained momentum, it doesn't guarantee a rewind on your token. Bloodletting, I think top half is only really good if you are doing 5 damage. And if you're doing 5 damage, you might as well kill the enemy and rewind your token. And that's what makes it so good. Whereas if you're doing the range build, I mean, yeah, sure, a 3 damage attack is kind of just like your regular range attack, right? Just 3 damage. But still, you're not getting the full benefit of the token persistent rewinding, then I don't really think it's worth bringing. I think there are better cards to be bringing here. I think the thing with Bloodletting is don't be afraid of doing the bottom attack. I think sometimes you think, oh no, I don't want to eat too many tokens. Be brave, right? Yes, you are frugal, but it doesn't mean your token needs to stay at the beginning track all the time. I think sometimes if you're too frugal of a person, I've seen this, you're always wanting your token to be doing this. Don't be afraid for your token to get around here. In fact, I think that's actually encouraged. So especially earlier on in the first rest cycle, I often find doing Bloodletting bottom half and paired with Fortitude top half, allowing you to do a 5 damage pierce 2 and then a 3 damage wound, which basically is a 4 damage attack. So that's actually quite big attack on decent initiative. It's actually quite good for the team. It just helps the team to get through enemies that much quicker. And you're not at too much risk in the beginning to put your token on the halfway point. But yeah, Bloodletting, very good, and I think is one of the reasons why the melee build outshines the range build very early on, because of the fact you can do 5 damage, whereas the range build, you know, at most you're doing 3 damage here with precision aim. Fortitude. So Fortitude is a bit of a funny card. The top half is attack 3, pierce 2, and you can move another token to make it a range 3 attack. With precision aim, this would be range 4, and with precision aim, this would be attack 4. So this actually represents probably the best range attack at level 1 that you have, in particularly dealing with one of your bugbears, which is the shielded enemy. But you have to eat 2 tokens for this to happen. And that is a problem. As I've said earlier, the range build struggles with rewinding tokens constantly, and using Fortitude too many times will give you that headache. But I think, once again, the range side needs to think more creatively, and I think this is why playing the range drifter, you tend to have a bit more fun, because the melee guy just tend to run and hit people. You can deploy Fortitude as just a melee attack, and vice versa actually. For the melee build, you can deploy Fortitude as a range attack, because sometimes you just need that flexibility. For the melee side, this is one of the few ways you can easily deal with high retaliating enemies, and for the range side, is for the shielded enemy. So Fortitude, I think, is an extremely good card for both sides of the melee for the drifter build. I think in particular, the flexibility is just additionally very, very good. I think one thing to note for Fortitude is that the Pierce 2 is, you know, sometimes you're thinking, I have to save this for the highly shielded enemies, and it depends. If your team already has ability to deal with highly shielded enemies, I think Fortitude just works really well just as attack 5. And even for the range side, Fortitude just works really well as attack 3. So don't be afraid if you're not getting the full value out of your Fortitude. One thing I do want to say about Fortitude is the bottom half. I have experimented with it a little bit. I think it's just slightly better on lower difficulty. I think on higher difficulty, it's difficult for this to work consistently because Drifter doesn't have the best initiative. And I think I talked briefly about initiative earlier. Drifter doesn't have the worst initiative. I mean, not exactly a Bone Shaper initiative type of character, but I think early on your initiative is going to be, your fast initiative is going to be something between 40 and 30. I mean, sometimes Fortitude is just even used as an initiative card while I play the Drifter. So, if your team is facing against a whole bunch of enemies, and some enemies on the verge of death, you kind of want to kill them quickly. So, the bottom half of Fortitude allows you to rewind a token when you kill an enemy, and your initiative doesn't play into that style. So I find that when you're playing a melee drifter, you do not want to be deploying the bottom side of Fortitude too much, because that's kind of not what you want to do. Because if you're going to be standing next to the enemies, you kind of want to go fast with cards like Prudent Prep, with cards like Vile Assault, to throw that damage in, and you're not always fast enough to be guaranteed to be killing the enemy, right? If you're playing with someone like Blink Blade or Banner Spear, they're probably mostly the fast finishers, whereas you're not if you're playing the melee type of drifter. For the ranged, I've seen this come into play sometimes. In particular, this really works really well with Gift of the Prey, which also allows you to rewind when you trigger, allows you to rewind a token when you trigger a kill. So I find in terms of communication, most often drifters' communication is, look, I'm going to go medium speed and I'm going to go hit this guy for 4 to 5 damage maybe. With Fortitude out, you're kind of signaling to the rest of your team that you want to kill stuff. And if you're playing the ranged drifter and you're struggling with rewinding token, this could be an extra condition for you to trigger a rewind. So you can almost be like, look, if I'm playing the ranged drifter, I'm going to go a little bit slower, and I'm going to let my team soften up the enemy for me. And because I have the extra range, I'm going to have the extra flexibility on what I hit. And with bottom side of Fortitude, by consistently going a bit slower and killing the enemy, you can get this to trigger once or twice per rest cycle, and that will help you even up the score a bit on this carbon neutral minigame that you try to play. But Fortitude top half is just such a good card. I often find it's difficult for me to conceptually give up the top half of Fortitude for the bottom half. But yeah, like I said, I have found that to be very useful, especially when you started taking Fierce Barrage, which will then eat through your trigger even quicker. But combining that Fortitude with like Gift of the Prey, it will really help with managing a token game. But you are deploying a lot of persistence cards by that point, so that's something to be aware of. So I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is Fortitude bottom half, I don't deploy it on the first rest cycle. I don't typically do that. But on the second rest cycle, when I'm playing ranged and my Fierce Barrage, my Precision Aim are getting through a bit, I'm going to start communicating and telegraphing to my team that, look, let me kill off the weak enemies, right? Back away, don't get hit, let me kill them, and I can rewind 1 or 2 more tokens with something like Gift of Prey, and that'll give me a huge boost while I play my full range build. Definitely a bit more work to do with Fortitude, but yeah, very good card against shielded enemies, and the bottom side I think is more effective for the ranged. Next 4 cards are your fast initiative cards at level 1. Destructive Fury, I don't think I need to talk too much about it. It is a double loss card, which means that you're not going to be using any of its actual abilities for a very long time, unless you're... I mean, I guess there's a combo where you deploy Precision Aim round 1 top half, and then you immediately go into a attack 4 range 3 triple attack pattern. It will at initiative 19, so you'll probably do a whole bunch of damage here, but you are eating through 3 of your tokens very quickly, so it is a combo technically you can pull off. I don't do that. In fact, I don't think I've ever done that, because I just never found that to be a good use of my lost card at the very beginning. So yeah, I guess maybe I'm just too conservative as a player to be thinking more proactively about stuff like that. But like I said, I think Drifter tend to be more successful when you are more frugal. So yeah, I don't rate Destructive Fury very highly. I think that combo is a real combo, and if your team, maybe if you're playing with a team of all round 1 preparers, so like you have a Deathwalker in the team, you have a Bone Shaper in the team, everybody needs to prepare, you need to prepare, everyone round 1 is not doing anything, it's a very high tempo situation, you just need to kill something, you might want to do this. But then I think your attack modifier is really going against you here, because if you have a smaller deck, you can fish out these immobilize quite easily, right? If that was like attack 3 target, range 3, attack 4, you can probably get a immobilized straight away, or there is something else in here, maybe a disarm, maybe a poison, maybe a curse, right? I think then this becomes a bit more useful at the cost of eating up 3 of your tokens, but I think if this is just a attack for range 3 targets at +3 difficulty, you know, you're not going to be killing any of these things, right? Like if I think about a Hound at level 4, even a Hound has 11 HP. This will be even less than half of his hit point. Archers, 16 HP, 10. I mean, yeah, sure, if you critted, you almost have killed a Hound, but you know, you're never going to get to a place where you can just one-shot somebody with this, so then you're still taking the attack. Yeah, I think maybe lower level difficulties, you know, if you're playing like on level 1, you could just one-shot the normal Hounds. You could, like, with a +1, you kill an Archer, then I can see this card really playing in, but on higher level difficulties, I've just never found that combo to be useful. Like, top half, again, technically this is attack 5 against 5 targets, but I mean, this will just eat through entire tokens so quickly, and again, on higher difficulties, too many hit points. You're going to need to play more rounds rather than just instantaneously combust. I've not found this card to be too useful on higher level difficulty. I think this is probably the only card I'll say that about in the entire Drifters card pool, that I almost never take this, even for initiative. 19 is just not fast enough to beat the Archer consistently, and there are many things that just goes even faster than the Archer. Yeah, Destructive Fury, I actually just leave at home. No Remorse, Prudent Prep, and Vow Assault, I talked about the healing potentials. They represent a lot of effective healing if you have continuous health up. The downside is they mostly represent healing for yourself. Vow Assault only heals you. Prudent Prep, it is a heal 2 range 3, so we have a bit more of option, but if you're going at initiative 14, you're probably drawing the attacking this round. Hopefully you've done what I told you to do as a brave drifter. You step into the... I've often find, like I said, you tend to step into the fray the round before, right? Like, you know, because you can't guarantee you're going to go fast enough, you're going to go here and try to tank some of this stuff for your team. So you probably have taken damage already, and I often find this is just a very good self-heal. Yeah, sure, if you're playing the range side, you know, within range 3, healing 4, it is really good, definitely, if you have another dedicated tank in the team. I'm thinking about Coral in particular. So definitely this plays really well into healing, but if anything, just the self-healing as a melee drifter is also just really good. The other thing I would just mention, the top half of Prudent Prep is actually not a bad card on +3 difficulty. I know it sounds a bit funny to say, well, Shield 1, Retaliate 1, it's not that great, right? I mean, we had that card in Gloomhaven on the Brute, and it wasn't amazing, I remember. But it's actually pretty good for a drifter, because you are really pairing it with your ability to recover hit point very quickly through continuous health, or you're doubling the shield with Unbreakable on the earlier levels. So there are many situations where I'm put into the position where I am the door opener, and I can move 4 to open a door with Deadly Shot, or maybe even move 6 if sustained momentum's up. And what I want to do, I don't want to run into the room. Like, almost with that many movement, I can open the door and then back out into the original room, and I can do this at initiative 14, putting up a shield or 2, and then let the enemy trickle into that room, so the team can create a kill zone choke point in that original room. So I would say don't underestimate Prudent Prep. If you're putting yourself in a position that you're anticipating 1 or 2 attacks, Prudent Prep is basically 2 hit points, right? Most of the time. And that's kind of okay, right? Like, this is kind of like saying, look, I'm just gonna heal 2 self. Heal 2 self, maybe get 2 damage out. Like, if this was just heal 2 doing 2 damage, that's actually not a bad card. Of course, if you're fighting against, you know, if you're thinking I'm gonna run into the room and put up this shield and get 6 attacks, forget it. Like, +3 difficulty, that will just kill you. No Remorse is a heal 3, range 3. The one difference in heal I do find does kind of matter from time to time. But I think No Remorse, most of the time you're probably not really taking it for the top half. The top half's kind of like an in-between room type of play where you've done everything. And you can do like a heal on somebody to make sure that, you know, they're topped up before their long rest or their next room. Because you don't really want to be using your top half to just purely for healing at one target. It's just not very efficient as a card. But what's good about No Remorse is definitely the initiative and the fact that the bottom side, I think I talked about earlier, is a massive move if you wanted it to be. So if you want to escape, No Remorse, initiative 20 with a potential move of 9 without any items with sustained momentum is an excellent escape card. Vile Assault. I get why there's no experience point for Vile Assault. I think for any other class this would be. Vile Assault, I think you should only evaluate it in the context of having Crushing Weight up. Because it should just be a attack 4 followed by attack 5 because of the poison with wound attack 6. So you should really think of this as like attack 4 plus attack 6. Which is a very good card. And I think, again, I think this is where you could technically at level 1 do like, you know, attack 4 poison, then attack 4 plus 1 for poison, plus 1 for wound, attack 6. Then you can do attack 4 again with bloodletting because the target's already been poisoned. So you could technically do this and do a lot of damage, but you are losing a card and you're losing 3 charges of your tokens. So you'll be putting yourself here. Yeah, it is technically possible. I don't think that's a good use of Drifter's turn, to be honest. Even if you're going up against an obstacle, I'm thinking about some scenarios where you have to destroy a particular door very quickly. I found that probably not doing Vile Assault, because the reason I say that is because the bottom side of this card is just so useful. Like the move 2 heal 2 represents so much when you have potential of adding +2 on either side. Whereas, yes, Vile Assault is a flash in the pan, but then you lose your initiative 27 card, you lose all the potential that comes with the movement and healing. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just a better way of playing the Drifter. I mean, if there is really emergency, definitely pull the trigger, but hopefully you don't put yourself into that scenario too often here. So, last 2 cards on level 1. Deadly Shot, great card, I love it. Move 4 is just fantastic. I don't think there's much more to say about that. Initiative is decent, not the greatest, but again, most of the time, I think Drifter is long. You're thinking more about positioning rather than initiatives. So you should almost think more about like, I need to be in the right place from my movement in the last round. So you're thinking 1 round ahead about where you need to be in order for something to happen, whether it is to gain range attack somebody, to take some hits, or to do some damage, melee damage. And Deadly Shot just gets you there. Like, this move 4 card, I feel like it's all you really need for that to happen. I don't think there's much more to say to it. I think the only thing I should say is I wish there was a improvement pip, but otherwise, great card. I'd take this almost all the way to the end, or close to the end. Because, yeah, move 4, great card. Top half is also very good. I think, again, I like the number 4 for Drifter, I guess. Range 4, attack 1, poison. Yeah, brilliant. I think there's a very good combo between Deadly Shot and Fierce Barrage. So, bottom half Fierce Barrage, top half Deadly Shot gives you a very good opening turn for you to be more impactful, especially if you combine it with a character like Blink Blade. Later on, Blink Blade can do multiple attacks, so Blink Blade really benefits from poison being applied. So, you know, you could have a first round that Blink Blade tells you, hey, I want to go slow, maybe attack this guy. I can do my head start, get in position, and attack this guy multiple times. And you say, you know what, I'll help you. I'm going to put poison on 2 targets. They're probably next to each other, so go nuts. I think that's a very good way to open if you are playing like a range Drifter. And I guess we can talk also a little bit about a hybrid Drifter, right? There's actually a slightly hybrid build that I found. I don't know if it's really anywhere online in those guides. I've definitely read a number of Drifter guides, but I don't think anybody really talks about the hybrid build, where you do Crushing Weight and you do Fierce Barrage. So, yeah, I think we talked a bit about straight up range build and melee build. I think the reason why those 2 builds talked about more often is because Drifter is typically one of your 6 starting classes. You're typically playing it right from the get-go. And from the get-go, I think Drifter naturally falls into this, hey, I need to do some dedicated tanking, and I need to do some damage type of Drifter, which means you often don't get the choice of combining these two sides of Drifter together, because this basically means you lose ability to set up defensive ability, right? So like what I mean by that is round 1 as a melee Drifter, I tend to do Crushing Weight and Unbreakable. Or if I'm doing like range damage, I tend to do Precision Aim and Fierce Barrage bottom half. I tend not to do Crushing Weight and Fierce Barrage, because then, you know, I'm not doing... If I'm melee, that kind of saying I'm just doing melee attacks and ranged attack. I'm not doing too much damage. Sorry, I'm not doing too much healing. Whereas I think if you're playing a melee Drifter as a starting class, you almost have to do the healing as a starting class. But if the Drifter is joining the game later on, like if you retired a few characters, you've unlocked some new items, you're coming in at a higher level, I think there's absolutely valid path for the Drifter to take Crushing Weight and Fierce Barrage bottom half into the same fight, because that gives you the flexibility to do something like Fierce Barrage plus Deadly Shot. It allows you to rapidly spread poison amongst enemies' ranks. Allows you to do something like Fierce Barrage, and later on you can get cards like Consume Stamina, which allows you to do a massive heal on your ally, even though you might not have, because this is amount of damage suffered by targets. Even though you might not have continuous health, and if you did have continuous health, this could represent massive amount of healing with double target, double attacks. But then you also get the benefit of doing melee attacks with your Crushing Weight. So in a way, you can kind of do range attacks and just having to watch out for 1 track of token to rewind, and then melee attack having to watch out for 1 track of token to rewind. I've actually tried that build once before in a 4-player game, and I found it to be quite effective, where you have quite a lot of flexibility, and it's really, really fun to play. So yeah, something to keep in mind. But yeah, Deadly Shot, a great card. Violent Inheritance, I don't find it to be too good. I think it's a card I take early on the scenario, scenarios where looting is very important. Simply because the top half is kind of basically attack 3, right? I don't think you really want to be doing this if you are a ranged Drifter. Attack 1 is terrible. But you're basically sacrificing 1 damage for loot. Which I understand why it was designed in this way. I almost wish this was just attack 2 and loot 1. I think that would have been great, actually. But unfortunately, it does mean you're losing a damage, and losing a damage early on as a level 1 Drifter against Algok's Guard is just terrible. I don't want to be doing that, and I don't want to be doing that for the sake of looting. I think if Drifter's perk Scavenger was discard up to X loot cards, where X is the number of cards you've looted, or rather, you can discard up to X loot cards and draw X new cards. I actually think that will give Violent Inheritance more value, because then you're almost like, if you looted 4 cards, then you're guaranteed to cycle through 4 more cards in the deck, and you can probably find the herb, the item that you're looking for. Then I think loot actions become much more important for the Drifter. The fact that this is only 2 cards and requires to loot 2 cards, for this to be useful really to max out its usability, and doesn't reward you for looting more than 2 cards, even though the perk names go Scavenger, I think it's a bit sad. And I think it definitely diminishes Violent Inheritance value. And on top of that, the bottom side of Violent Inheritance doesn't give you anything to write home about. I mean, move 4 is great, attack is great, so there are definitely situations where if you have a perk that says you have to, like battle goal like Assassin, that says you want to kill enemy before they get to act, on lower level difficulties, I can totally see Violent Inheritance come into play there, because you can move 4, attack something, right, and then maybe also hit it with like Fortitude, making a double range attack with precision aim setup. You know, you can do a lot of damage with precision aim setup, the fierce barrage setup. You can do a lot of damage with this burn. But, you know, you open a door, that's where you really want to do the damage. Maybe you can kill something right off the get-go. But again, on higher level difficulties, it's just really hard. It's just really hard to do enough damage to kill somebody right off the get-go. So I often don't find burning a card to be useful for that purpose. But you know, I can definitely see you combine that with your allies. Let's say your ally open the door, they do a whole bunch of damage on a guy, then you kill it off, you get your assassin battle goal. But that kind of assumes your allies are happy for you to do that. My group definitely doesn't want to do that. They all have their own battle goal they want to do. They don't really care about yours. So burning a card, I think again that if the attack modifier was better, or if this perk was better, I can see this card coming in more. But yeah, I bring in earlier on. I think especially scenario 0, where you have to bring in and you definitely use it. Then you realize looting can be good at times, for sure. So yeah, bring it for the looting scenarios, but otherwise I find doing damage is better, more efficient. Okay, so that's level 1 cards, and it's already an hour and 45 minutes, so let's speed it up a bit. So level 2, I think level 2 gives you 2 very good choices. Shockwave is fantastic for the melee build, and I think this is a card that's really like Bloodletting, designed for the melee build. Moving 3, shield 1 and initiative 17 is exactly what you want. Unfortunately, it doesn't beat Archer. So sometimes you do this, you do end up getting hit in the face anyway, and the shield doesn't come into effect as much as you'd want to. But, you know, it's pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. The enhancement pip is extra bonus, I suppose. But yeah, it's a pretty good card for the melee build. The top half, I think later on when you think you know, enemies gets a bit stronger, maybe shield 1 is not as important, although I also find shield 1 quite useful. But definitely the shockwave is also really good on the top half, where you're fighting against many enemies with high shields. So shockwave acts as a bit of a pseudo AoE almost, because it does 2 pure damage to the target adjacent to you. So later on, as you get more and more cards and you're more confident with playing the resistance minigames, you get access to cards like this, like an ending fight, like against all odds, where you can do multi-target. That's when shockwave really comes into play, right? Like doing 1 attack and doing 2 splash damage to an enemy, sure, against shield enemy, that could be more effective damage done, but it's not that exciting. But later on, you're doing like against all odds, you're hitting 4 enemies, they're grouped up together, and you get to splash 4 times, and you also get to rewind maybe a couple of tokens from shockwave, a couple of tokens from crushing weight. All of a sudden, that becomes really exciting opening. I think the only problem with shockwave is finding the time to deploy it. Because it's top half, I struggle to deploy it on the first round, because first round inevitably I'm deploying crushing weight. So typically shockwave is something I deploy in between my rest cycles. So, you know, if you're going to a room and you know there's like wind demon in the room, there's like flame demon in the room, and you think, you know what, I can do shockwave, I can combine that with some multi-target attacks, and that'll be a really good way of cleaning up a room, and shockwave is your MVP there. So top half I think plays into the game much more later on. Bottom half is just a good action to do as a melee drifter. But this is definitely not a card you would consider if you're playing more on the range side. I think ever forward, I can definitely see this even for the melee drifter actually. I think heal 1 bottom half, target 3, range 3 is just a good action. Combine that with continuous health, will ease through your token quite quickly, but is an excellent action to do if the team needs a bit of healing. In particular, if you have someone who's quite efficient as a tank. Again, I'm thinking about Koro here in particular. I mean, there are other characters, but Koro is definitely one of the earlier one you'll probably be unlocking. I'm not going to be talking too much about spoiled characters here, but definitely, you know, if you have a more dedicated tank, remember you don't have to target all 3 targets. A bottom high range small heal combined with continuous health is just a good heal. So yeah, ever forward I think it's a great card. It's just, I think if you're playing melee, Shockwave just does a bit more work individually than Ever Forward. Top half of Ever Forward, I think, is a bit of a trap if you're playing ranged. I think is not bad. Attack 3, range 4 is just, it's not bad with precision aim, but it doesn't pair well with Fierce Barrage because there's no mechanic in here that does anything else other than just a bit of damage. And again, if your attack modifier deck was a bit more exciting, I can definitely see this card being more useful on the top half for the range build. But as it stands, it's just kind of like a basic attack. You know, like I'd much rather be doing continuous health as an attack and make that a neutral rewind than doing this. Yeah, sure, regen definitely plays into the style where if you're doing a bit of tanking as a ranged drifter, and you definitely should, regen is good. But the danger with regen is if you have that up and you have continuous health, yes, every regen will be 3 hit points healing for you, but it will again eat through your continuous health quite quickly. Of course, you can always refuse the healing. But having said that, I think Ever Forward you'll probably be taking that in your regular range build. I sort of laid out my typical build here, I guess. But yeah, I'm probably taking it Ever Forward mostly for the range side, but I'm probably mostly taking for the bottom action, because I think the bottom action is just really good. If you're standing further back from the team doing range attacks and your team all getting hits, clear of those poisons, those wounds, those brittle, those bangs, and also just restore a bit of hit point. Set it up with continuous health, you know, like if you're facing against a very high tempo room and you want to deploy precision aim round 1, maybe also deploy continuous health, and then you can immediately top your team up and then also do an attack next round, right? You could do like, you know, like Deadly Shot or Draining Arrow next second round plus bottom half of Ever Forward. That will either amplify damage and heal the team or reduce incoming damage and heal the team. I think it'd just be a very good 2-round action. I've done that often before. So, level 3 I think is a bit of a funny level. And I think drifters often have these levels. We have very definitive like ranged v melee, crushing weight v precision aim type of build. And then you have levels like this where I think is a bit of a crisscross. So Dual Bow I actually find is a melee character build, whereas Fierce Barrage is the ranged character build. I know it's funny to say that because if you were to take Dual Bow, which you would have thought a bow indicator is a range attack, but if you were to take a Dual Bow on as your range attack here, and you do the 2 targets attack 3 range 4 type of stuff, I think you'll quickly find you'll run out of precision aim charges at this level. I mean, sure, Fierce Barrage technically is also increasing the target by 1, and again, you know, you don't really have a choice, you just have to do it. But at least give you another track to play with. Whereas this it's just simply 2 attacks, and there's only 2 damage, so it's not too great. Whereas I find like Dual Bow is actually pretty good for the melee, and in my most recent build playthrough, I actually tried Fierce Barrage for the very first time on the melee build. I know, it's crazy. And I didn't find it to be very useful at all. Whereas every time I've played a melee drifter that I've taken Dual Bow, I found it to be incredibly useful. Just because, again, melee struggles with high retaliate enemies, and the range 3 attack 2 often is just good enough. And it allows you to fish for your rewind. So if your melee is in a really dangerous position, you know, your melee token is in a really dangerous position, like it's around here or something, or around here, sometimes a quick fish with Dual Bow is just good enough to find one of these 4 cards, and you can move it back by 1 to give you another charge. Or, you know, it's just good for rewinding your other tokens too if you find it. But I just find it's a filler attack, but it's just good enough. It's just good to soften up some of those high retaliating enemies to help Drifter actually approach and do a big hit. Bottom half of Dual Bow, I mean, yeah, sure, it's an ability, but I think if you are needing to rely on this to rewind your tokens, you're probably in quite a bit of trouble. I've never thought I needed to do this on the melee side. On the range side, I can definitely see that, but again, I think I go back to on the range build, I much prefer taking Fierce Barrage because of the long-term potential for the build than just the what seems like an obvious choice of dual bow. So I think dual bow is actually more of a melee card. Whereas Fierce Barrage, I think, is actually exclusively a range card. The reason I say that is because I originally thought in this playthrough, I thought that if I were to take top half of Fierce Barrage for my melee build, I'm effectively doing 2 attacks. It's kind of drawing a crit every round, right? And why wouldn't that be good, right? 2 attacks to 4 with Crushing Weight. Sounds great. The problem I found was you end up, unlike any other characters, where just doing double attacks is just a good thing to do. With Drifter, this is too conditional. Not only do you need the 2 enemies to be standing next to each other, which is very common, you also need, at that point in time, for your token situation to be in a reasonable place for you to do that attack. So what I mean by that is, right, so if you go up to an enemy and there's 2 enemies next to you, like in this formation, great. But sometimes I find my token to be here. And I'm like, well, I can't do this attack because then I lose Crushing Weight forever. Even if my token were here, I think, okay, if I do those attacks and I don't have like sustained momentum because I've already used it, and I don't have like Draining Arrow because I've already used it, I have to rely on Bloodletting to rewind the attack, then I can't really do this attack either because that means next round I'm not doing any attack. So in reality, for Fierce Barrage to happen, your token has to be at the halfway point or earlier, / the enemy has to be standing next to each other. I think the fact that there are 2 conditions to fulfill makes Fierce Barrage that much more restrictive and therefore not very useful. Whereas, again, for the melee side, the initiative sometimes is so important because you're approaching the enemy on the last round, right? You're coming in, so you're saying, look, I'm coming into this enemy and I'm hoping, maybe this is a ranged enemy like an archer, I'm hoping this guy not to step away early. Sure, 26 not the fast initiative, but 26 sometimes is just good enough as an initiative card for that to happen. And if an enemy does step away, right, at least you can still use this as a double range attack, and often they won't be stepping away 4 hexes away. So this is where I found dual bow again and again to shine in the melee build, whereas I've just not found the 2 conditions I need to meet for Fierce Barrage top half to happen to be good enough for me to be using that attack constantly. So many situations where I'm in this type of position, where I have 2 valid target and I want to do the top half of Fierce Barrage, my token's kind of like here, and I'm like, I can't really afford to do 2 attacks right now, and I end up not doing it. Whereas the bottom half of Fierce Barrage, I think I talked about this hybrid build, I think it's really fun if you combine the melee and the extra target. You have loads of flexibilities and you can output quite a different type of conditions and attack to an enemy. I think it's just really, really fun to do. I mean, especially later on, right? If you, like I said, if you do Fierce Barrage plus Deadly Shot, you put a poison on the enemy, and then you go up and you do something like an ending fight, then you do attack 5, move 3, attack 5, because you've got Crushing Weight and the poison you've said. All of a sudden you become quite cool at doing DPS and you feel really good. That's a really fun build. But for the range build, definitely the extra target longer term plays in much more to the build, because there's so many cards like Consume Stamina, like Use Every Part, that favors you acquiring additional target that you won't come back often, I find, to take dual bow later on. At level 4, and I think the other thing I think I should say is Fierce Barrage, again, communication. And when you're playing with 4 players, the fact that you are putting out this persistence token actually represents some kind of a passive messaging, right? Like with Fierce Barrage, you can, whereas other classes might have to say, oh, I'm doing, because you can't say numbers in Frosthaven, I'm doing a multi-target attack, you know, I'm going to do some damage. Because your friends, if they play with you long enough, knows your Drifter will be doing around 4 damage, and they see this card out, then they know exactly every time you'll be doing a 2 target attack at round 4 damage. That's with of course with precision aim out, right? So you have these 2 cards out, it's almost telegraphing to your friends very easily what you're gonna do every round. Then the only thing left to tell them is about initiative and your position. So I actually find this is also a good way of telling your friends what you can do, and the more observant friend in the group will definitely understand what that means, and they know they can potentially leave 4 enemies around 4 HP, 2 enemies at 4 HP, and you can finish them off. Bang bang. I think level 4 is where Drifter really comes into its own. So whereas before, on the range side, you're really struggling with rewinding tokens. At level 4, you get a solution to that. Gift of the Prey is a attack 3, range 3, or attack 4, range 4 with precision aim, or attack 4, range 4, 2 targets with precision aim and fierce barrage. And if you kill an enemy with the attack ability, so if you have doing 2 attacks, yes, you are eating 1, 2, 3 tokens across 2 cards, but if you just kill 1 enemy with one of those 2 attacks, you get to rewind a token. So I think this is where I think, in terms of telegraphing, if you were to blow 3 of these cards out, Gift of the Prey definitely helps you telegraph a lot, because you're basically saying, look, if I can do 2 attacks at 4 damage at range 4, which is quite a lot of flexibility and targets you could acquire with that. If I just kill 1 enemy with that, I can rewind 2 tokens, because if you got Fortitude bottom set up, then you're only really pushing your token net 1 step forward. And if you find one of these on one of those 2 attacks, you're kind of carbon neutral. Net 0. Net 0 is the name of the game for Drifter. So I think Gift of Prey, very, very good, and you are almost guaranteed to be taking this if you're going ranged. In fact, I think if you're not taking it and you're going back to take dual bow, you really should be rethinking about your life here. Yeah, Gift of Prey, excellent card, and very easy to communicate with your team as well. Often I just say, look guys, let me kill that. Just let me kill that. I can kill it. You know, I can go fast, but just let me kill that. Don't touch that guy. And I can rewind my tokens. And with these cards out, they will know exactly what you mean. Bottom side is often I find I'm not using it for the range build. Even though technically it's kind of good because, again, it's a kill trigger. But yeah, move 4 is great. In the context of any other character, move 4 will be excellent. But with sustained momentum, we basically have access to move 4, right? And as a range guy, you don't want to be moving too much anyway. So yeah, I think the problem with the bottom side is it is really good. It's just every rest cycle with precision aim up, I want to be doing the top half of Gift of the Prey. So yeah, it is a half of a card, but and it's really good half. It just the top half is even better. Chunk of Flesh is almost exclusively designed for the melee. I mean, attack 2 otherwise would be completely useless. And an attack 4 heal 2 range 1, moving the character token on one of your persistent ability backward 1 slot. It's just everything you want as a melee drifter. So heal 2 range 1 most often you're just healing yourself. Again, when I talked about healing earlier, you know, drifter is good at healing, but sometimes Drifter is not very good at healing Drifter's allies because of cards like this. I've seen people trying to do, hey, I can heal you for 4 because I will continuous health up. You know, I can heal you a lot if you just come and stand next to me. But don't go too fast. It's inevitably a disaster. But if you're thinking about this card, it's like I attack 4, heal 4 on myself, and then rewind a token. That's great, right? We like number 4, and this is level 4. This is 4/4. 4/4. Fantastic. So much so the top half is so good, I rarely actually use the bottom half. Sometimes I use it in high tempo scenarios where I really just need to survive. And I need the shield too. But I often find it's much better to just put up continuous health and use Chunk of Flesh to heal me back up slowly. And sink into my hit point pool there. Remember, you don't lose cards until you lose your last hit point. So why not abuse your hit point pool? Yeah. So I don't strictly think Chunk of Flesh is a replacement for Unbreakable. Rather that it is a supplemental card to continuous health, because it just makes continuous health that much more effective. Okay, level 5. Level 5 is a funny one. I think Breakthrough is, for me, the pick for both the range build and the melee build and the hybrid build. Breakthrough is just really good. You struggle. Frost Haven has a lot of high shield enemies, and the higher your base attack, I think something the Drifter really struggles with is your base attack value is not increasing a lot, right? If you think about from level 1 to level 4, your melee side, your Chunk of Flesh does not increase your base attack value. It just adds more abilities to the top half of the card. Neither does Fierce Barrage. Doesn't increase the base attack value. Dual Bow doesn't increase base attack value. Neither does Ever Forward. Gift of Prey is a +1 only on your base attack value compared to like your starting range attack card like Continuous Cells, but not really because you already have a 3 base attack range attack in Fortitude. So up to level 4, you haven't really increased your base attack beyond 3 or 2. And that's a problem for shielded enemies. I think for regular enemies, your Crushing Weight and your Precision Aim will help you with that. But for shielded enemies, if you have a shield 4 enemy in a Living Spirit, right? Yeah, sure, this is attack 4, but enemy has shield 4. So you're really falling back to Fortitude to help you here. I mean, that's rare, but if you have like even a shield 2 enemy, yeah, sure, Chunk of Flesh will get through it, but not effectively. Breakthrough really does it though, because Breakthrough is either attack 6, shield pierce 2, or attack 4, shield pierce 2. Either way, those 2 shield enemies, good job, goodbye. Even 4 shield enemies, Breakthrough will break through, literally. And the fact that you can apply Wound is amazing. So I think as a ranged Drifter, you struggle with shielded enemies. Breakthrough is what you're looking for, and it gives you a rest from having to do a range attack. Right? If your token is too far forward and you need a bit of time to rewind, maybe you need to long rest with Persistence to do a rewind. That's fine. Go forward and Breakthrough. Hit it hard, and do a bit of tanking. Even if you're not using the breakthrough for the top half, because you just need to rewind tokens, well, on the melee side, Breakthrough's got you. Breakthrough is like the guy that's holding your trust fall. If you need to go offensive, Breakthrough's got it. And if you need to go just defensive, utility, rewind, Breakthrough also has it. If you're at least adjacent to 2 enemies, you can rewind a token. It plays really well for the range build as well, because sometimes, you know, like I said, you need to do a bit of off-tanking. Go forward and do it. 2 enemies is great. If this was 3 enemies, I'd say no. But 2 enemies, very manageable on a 4-player game. So yeah, both sides of Breakthrough, absolutely amazing. And remember, with the Wound ability, you have to decide before your attack. I think sometimes for 1 guaranteed damage for a token is quite costly. So I don't often do that, but yeah, not much to be said about that. It's a pretty straightforward card. It's just a good card. Survivalist, on the other hand, I think the problem with Survivalist is, like I said earlier, this is a top half Persistence ability. I wish it was bottom half. I think a supporting Drifter can be very, very good, because you have a lot less pressure to rewind your token, because obviously you can just choose not to heal, whereas it's hard to choose not to attack or hard to choose not to take damage. I think I've demonstrated that plenty earlier when I was talking about these cards. You can just choose not to heal, of course, and you can always still attack, and most of your attacks like Sustain Momentum or Continuous Cells will allow you to rewind your tokens. So you can move to rewind your tokens, right? There are a lot of ways to rewind your tokens. So Survivalist is a very good card if you're leaning into a supporting Drifter type. I just found, again, on +3 difficulties, there are better classes out there that can help you with applying these conditions than simply brute forcing your way through healing. And you know, sometimes you want to put ward up before you heal. As in, you don't want to be healing your ally a lot. You just want to apply ward, you know. And yeah, sure, like I said, Ever Forward and Survivalist is a great combo, but it's almost feel like a waste if you're not pairing, if you're going pure support healing type of Drifter, you're not pairing Survivalist with Continuous Health. But then sometimes you don't heal that much on your ally, so it's kind of weird dynamic, right? Because you want to almost apply a ward on characters like Bling Blade before they take a lot of damage, because once they've taken a lot of damage, then you want to heal them back up. But then you put them in quite a precarious position, because, you know, do they want to stand still and let you heal them? What's the initiative order? Like, there's just a lot of information to be getting through for that type of play to be effective. And if you missed it just by a little bit, and, you know, Drifter, I think Drifter suffers from not having higher initiative. I think this was a 4 initiative and this was like a 7 initiative. Absolutely, the supporting type of Drifter will be great, because you have the ability to just say, I'm going to beat everybody, I'm going to heal you up, I'm going to put a ward on you. But if you're saying, look, I'm going to go at 27 and I can get to you and heal you, but then you get beaten by 3 archers and your friend is dead. Yeah, this is why I find the Survivalist, theoretically, it could be a very, very good card. In reality, I think on +3 difficulty, I think Drifter is better at putting out damage and doing healing as a secondary, still critical part of Drifter's role, but a secondary role rather than the primary role. And Survivalist is almost indicating that you should be doing that as a primary role. The bottom half of Survivalist, move to loot 1. Yeah, sure, I'm okay with that. For level 5 card though, the heal X is interesting. Technically this could be a lot of healing, because remember with continuous health, a heal X even with no loot is 2 heal. If you just loot 2 tokens, this is a heal 6 on self. I think if this was here at level 3, I would have taken Survivalist and I would have put it into my melee build and be very happy with it. But because it's competing against Breakthrough though, I can't imagine any circumstances, like I said, unless you're really doing the healing type. But then you're probably putting up Survivalist up very, very quickly anyway. Yeah, I think Breakthrough is just gonna be a better card if I'm playing some sort of melee self-healing Survivalist, self-healing Drifter with tanking. I mean, if this just said heal X, range X, I actually think Survivalist will have a much more use on the bottom half, because then at least I can heal somebody else. So yeah, I think most of the time you'll probably be taking Breakthrough for the sheer power that this card brings to the class. To be fair, I've never played a pure supporting Drifter, so maybe I'm being biased against it. But yeah, I can't see myself just putting up the top half of warding and doing this on the first round and then doing mediocre attack for the next round. It just feels wrong. Okay, coming up to level 6 then. So yeah, this is, like I said, this is my build, and you can see on both sides I've taken Breakthrough. I think on level 6 there's a real argument for taking accurate strikes for the range Drifter, because I think range Drifter definitely suffers from dealing with ranged enemies, and whereas the melee Drifter at this level have 2 very powerful cards in the form of Fortitude and Breakthrough to deal with shielded enemies. Most of your range attack is still going to struggle with dealing with shielded enemies, especially if you're deploying Fierce Barrage to increase your target. Accurate Strikes is a good way of dealing with that. In fact, I would say Accurate Strikes, both sides, is very good for the range build, because on the range build, you are naturally going to be doing multi-target attack now, because you've got Fierce Barrage, and you've got Gift of the Prey, and the fact that you can gain advantage on all your attacks. Like if you're doing Gift of the Prey and you want to kill an enemy, you want that guarantee, why not get Accurate Strikes with it? Because then you have advantage on all your attacks. Yeah, sure, initiative is going to suck, but you're probably leaning into the style where you're playing more, hey, soften enemies up please, and I'll try to finish this off type of play. And yeah, bottom side of Accurate Strikes plays really well with that. And then if you're facing against shielded enemies, go with the top half of Accurate Strikes. The funny thing here is, if you're in a room full of very, very shielded enemies in the first room, you could actually open Fierce Barrage into Accurate Strikes on the first round. And that would mean that, you know, as compared to Precision Aim, which only increases your damage by 1, You just need to be a little bit more careful with your positioning, but then Gift of the Prey can immediately be like 2 attacks of 3 damage with Pierce 3. I mean, against like Living Spirit, that even at high level, that's going to be quite a big punch, and your team's going to really, really appreciate that. So I think Accurate Strike is definitely amazing for the range build. On the melee side, I actually think you should take Consume Stamina. So hear me out. Even though Consume Stamina top half is a range attack, and you know, if you are doing the range build, you probably want to be taking this initially. And I think if you look at my build, I actually think you should just go back and take Consume Stamina anyway for the range build, so you have access to both of these cards basically. But I think for the melee build, Consume Stamina is great, because often you get into a position, like I said, you're on the front line, you are fighting the enemies, and then your ally might need a clutch heal, and I find Consume Stamina top half to be just great for that. Because if you start with Crushing Weight and Continuous Health, no matter what you do, Consume Stamina will be a heal too, even if the enemies do not suffer any damage from the attack. If they do suffer any damage from the attack, Consume Stamina becomes infinitely better. Like a 2 damage attack will become a heal 4, and a range 4 that's almost guaranteed to stop your Blink Blade from dying. So I think Consume Stamina is a hidden clutch melee card for the top half actually. The initiative again plays into the melee style of you wanting to go fast before the enemy gets to act, so that they don't move away from you for you to execute your attack. And I think finally the bottom half is just optionally useful. Sometimes, not all the time, you want a little bit of Retaliate, okay, but Retaliate 2 never really builds in enough of a payoff for me. But the payoff's more on the bottom side. Like sometimes you move next to enemy, you don't kill the enemy, then your team kills the enemy, you get the Rewinding token. Great. No problem with that. So, and again, if you play this card, your team will know what you're telegraphing for them to do. So that's also optionally helpful. But you shouldn't be relying on this as a way to rewind your token. So yeah, I think Consume Stamina is a hidden melee card of the two. Whereas Accurate Strike, I think, is definitely a ranged build here. And I think I talked about that ranged characters probably want to go back and take Consume Stamina at level 7. So I think level 7 really for the range characters, like for the range drifters, like, I mean, ignore the top half. I think at this point you probably know, if you play enough ranged, I certainly know that rewinding a token is really, really, really good. And the range characters definitely struggle with that, especially if you're consistently deploying Fierce Barrage alongside your precision aim and you're not getting the kill that you want. So Like the Wind definitely do that. So if you are playing the range side, I think from the range side really starts to pick up steam from level 4. And between 4, 5 and 6 you're going to get a good grasp of what am I struggling with, and if you're consistently struggling with rewinding token, get a pair of movement shoes and pick up Like the Wind, because that will let you rewind basically 3 tokens most of the time on a 4-player game, and that's almost a complete reset on your Fierce Barrage and Precision Aim every single rest cycle, and that's amazing. That's really amazing. It actually gives you the option to then also deploy like cards like Accurate Strikes, because this is every attack, right? So if you're doing 2 target attack every round, you're eating up a token here, 2 tokens here, and then 2 tokens here. So you're eating net 5 token every time you do any attack, which will quickly put you in a terrible position. But then Like the Wind will whoosh, Like the Wind reverse all of those tokens, and that's fantastic. So I actually think you're probably at level 7 on the range side taking Like the Wind, and I've taken it before, and some characters which gives you ability to increase your movement on your round, because this is for each ally move through during this ability, and characters like Snowflake can increase your move. And with your boots, even with sustained momentum, although if you're deploying all 3 of these, you're probably not deploying sustained momentum, but let's say you were, you can move through a lot of your allies if you have like Bone Shaper on your team, because this is each ally, so you cannot repeat the same ally twice, of course. But if you have like 5-6 allies on the team, you can move through all of them. I mean, that's ideal, but most time I found, every time I play this, I managed to get at least 3 tokens, sometimes 4. But yeah, 3 tokens is great. It allows you to really reset your current situation on your tokens, and it's just fantastic for the range side. For the melee side, I think you don't struggle so much, as I said before, with rewinding your token, because you need less of these persistence card. I mean, I've sometimes been getting away with just playing Crushing Weight as my only persistence for scenario on the melee side. And Ending Fight gives you that ability to eat into your spare token capacity by giving you double attacks. And I think it's funny actually comparing an Ending Fight to Fierce Barrage, top half. You might think in some ways this is just 2 attacks of 4, but the benefit of an Ending Fight is that the 2 targets don't need to be next to each other, so that you have much more flexibility in when you execute this particular card versus this card. And typically you can almost execute this card on the second round of the game, right? So first round you set up Crushing Weight, second round you go an Ending Fight. Move 3 gives you also lots of flexibility on where the second target needs to be. So yeah, an Ending Fight, great card for the melee side of the build. Again, I don't think you should be taking this at all if you're playing the range side. Bottom side, not going to talk about it. I mean, I don't often do that, and I don't think you should really be doing that to give up the top half of this card. Level 8. So, level 8 Against All Odds, great card. I think there's almost an argument for you to take this if you're a range build and if you're really struggling with rewinding your tokens, because Against All Odds will just rewind almost all of your tokens on the range abilities. But I think this is probably a slightly better outlet for your ranged build, that you can go back and take Consume Stamina at this point, personally. But Against All Odds is great. One attack doesn't mean a lot, but if you have Crushing Weight up, you can do this, attack loads of people, and so long as you don't eat through all of your tokens, you can even go back here and you can rewind all of them. So just amazing, right? Nothing to say here. For every enemy targeted, you get to unwind your token. And in fact, I think this is one of the few ways you can draw through your deck really quickly as the drifter. I wish I can combine accurate strikes with Against All Odds, but I've just found Consume Stamina to be so much more useful on the melee build that I almost never do this pairing. But yeah, Against All Odds, if you can get strengthened, that's even better. I think this is almost a guaranteed way to find one of these 4 cards to rewind one of your token if you're looking for it. You'll inevitably find some other effect as part of this, I find. So although you can't really bank on them, because Immobilize and Push and Pierce is just not the same thing. But finding healing is always good if you have continuous health up, remember. So yeah. Bottom side, when enemies come to you, they take 3 damage. Again, situationally useful. I would say most of the time, the high shielded enemies I want to kill are things like Wind Demon, Flame Demon, Living Spirit is another good one. They're mostly ranged, so it's only good against few enemies, very, very few. So, situationally useful, not the greatest, I find. If this was a Retaliate 3, Range 3, maybe it would be more useful. But yeah, most of the time, Against All Odds, I'm playing it for the top half. Now, I think some people think you probably should take Inevitable Conclusion for your range build, and it is certainly a powerful attack. At range 3, damage 5 with Precision Aim, and you can move another token to apply Immobilize, and Immobilize is a great condition at Initiative 29. Feels like a good card, but once again, I find at higher level difficulties on the range build, I have fun by consistently run into the problem with having enough tokens to eat through. Because I just want to do too many things. Like, I often always deploy these 2, and then I make a lot of attacks. Maybe there's a better way to play range that I haven't yet discovered. But I find that when it comes to blow my tokens for loss, I'm basically saying I'm going to do this, and this is the conclusion. This is the end of me as a character and the end of the enemy, hopefully. And yeah, sure, it's a reasonable payoff, I suppose. But I think but you know, you're really holding this card to the end, then this has to be the conclusion. But I often find the problem is I don't conclude the situation with this card. Like I do my attack, and then yeah, my attack modifier deck is not amazing enough for me to finish off the enemy, and I'm still in a deadlock with the enemies. So yeah, I don't know. I've not found this to be amazing personally on higher difficulty levels. I wish this was just like attack 6 times so I can go on the same enemy. I think if that was like, maybe that's too powerful, but even attack 3 times on the same enemy, I maybe would have found this more useful, because I find often on +3 difficulty you just want to kill one objective, one boss or one enemy very quickly, rather than spreading all your damage and immobilizing them, so that, you know, then you're not killing them, but then you're killing yourself because you're going to go through all your tokens. So really weird. I think it's a weird design for maybe higher level difficulty, because by the time you get to the end and you want to use this, you probably don't have enough tokens to support this anymore. So then you're basically concluding your own capability. So yeah, I think I'm stuck in a circular loop, because I've never found this card to be useful in a right part of this circular loop line of our logical argument. And then the bottom side is like, well, if I'm ranged, I'm going to struggle to use the bottom side of this card, funnily enough. I think if you were melee, this would be great, and if this wasn't going up against the odds, then you'll probably take this just for the attack 3 poison. But I think at this level, against the odds, it's just so much better, because hopefully your attack modifier deck now has more interesting cards in it, and you know, occasionally this allowing you to draw through your deck quicker is just a better result, even if this is not a bottom side attack. So I don't know. Yeah, attack 5 poison is good, but then yeah, am I really taking this just for the bottom side attack at this level? I don't know. Against the odds just has much better payoff. So I think if you're going ranged, I actually go back and take consumer stamina at this point, and my melee tends to take against the odds for sure. Okay, level 9, so let's round this off with a bang, and use every part is definitely it. Use every part is great. Use every part is 4, 4, 4. So what's not to like, right? Number 4 is Drifter's number. Drifter's favorite number is definitely 4. And we have 4 on every single part of this card. Maybe ignore this 3. So yeah, attack 4, range 4. Even for a melee guy, that's great. The fact that you can heal 4, target all allies adjacent to at least one enemy targeted with attack ability is amazing on a 4-player game. Sure, that could potentially eat through a lot of your continuous health trigger. But hey, who cares? You are healing people, and most often you're really just healing one particular ally here. You're not healing like the entire group of allies. And heal 6 is bang on, great. So I think this is really good if you have a Blink Blade who needs your help, and the Blink Blade is on the other side of the room assassinating a key Algox archer. Then use every part, bam, shoot it across, put your Blink Blade back to full health, amazing. Stave off that inevitable, that lost card potential, amazing. Initiative 18, again, not the fastest, doesn't beat Archer unfortunately, it's sad. If this only is at 14, just add another 4 to this card, that would be amazing. But hey, 18 is good enough. It will get you to go first and heal the key ally most of the time. And I think it's a really good complement actually to consume stamina, because you could, like if your ally is really on the front line, sustaining the hit, consume stamina and then use every part will really help you heal them back up, and it's great. Bottom side is just fantastic. Move 3 attack X, where X is the number of hexes you move through. Like, I mean, just basically move 3 attack 3, right? With any type of improvement like crushing weight, this becomes move 3 attack 5. any movement improvement, and there are plenty in this game. I'm thinking about movement boost, I'm thinking about allies ability that increases your movement on your round, on your turn. I mean, this just becomes crazy. So bottom attack, bottom move, much appreciated. And I think both the range side and the melee side would really appreciate this. Everlasting. I think Everlasting also has force in the card name. I feel like this is a design choice. 4 sources of 4 or less damage. You suffer negated damage. I think the only problem with this is it is 4 or less damage. If it's 4 or more damage, I would think about taking Everlasting. Maybe I'm asking too much here, but I don't think as Drifter I am dying to 4 or less damage most of the time. Most of the time I'm dying to 4 more damage. And I think on higher level difficulties, this is almost saying like on higher level difficulties, because enemies hit so hard, right? Like on level 7, they hit for 7 on Elite Argos card. And you're going to see a lot of elites because you're playing 4-player games. You have to have then shielded for 3 first for Everlasting to even kick in. At that point, you're just taking 4 damage. You might as well just do Vile Assault, bottom half, with continuous health to heal those 4 damage back up. That would be a much more efficient way of tanking than using Everlasting as a top action as well, nonetheless. If this was a bottom action, I might consider it. But top action? Really? And only 4 charges? Like if the skeleton attacks you 3 times, you're almost at the end. Like what are we what are we trying to outlast here? Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't find the top half of this to be too useful. And yeah, having to maybe commit like chunk of flesh first with this for me to be properly utilizing this and then only have 4 charges here. Nah, not good enough for me, unfortunately. The bottom side I think is really, really, really good. Applying Strengthen is just amazing, whether it's on yourself or on your allies. So if you're playing like a support, again, I must say I haven't played the support Drifter ever before, so maybe like if you could combine Everlasting with Survivalist, you know, first round, now you're putting up Ward, you're putting up Strengthening and Regen and Healing and 2 targets, and your team is like super happy because you've done that, your Blink Blade's going bananas. And yeah, sure, why not? But I don't know. Am I just healing then for the rest of the game? Maybe that is a legit way of playing the Drifter. I don't know, but I think I think maybe this is again one of those. Hey, I'm coming in late as a Drifter into a party that's already set up, but then But then you're level 9. So maybe I don't know. I think doing more damage is always going to be better on higher level difficulties than just simply healing, even if it's healing with Strengthen, like even if it's a really, really efficient healing. But then use every part is also very efficient healing. So who knows? Anyway, I'm going to just go back to here. So if you want to look at my I said earlier I'm not going to do cookie cutter builds. I think there's many ways to build Drifter. This is just, I'm showcasing this a little bit because I like the idea of Drifter taking some melee card on the range side and some range card on the melee side. I don't know if that's a common thing to do. I certainly haven't read any guides online that recommend this, but this is just how I like to play my melee / range Drifter. And like I said, there is a hybrid build where you come in and you take you take key cards like Fierce Barrage. Obviously you take Breakthrough, but then you can also take cards like Gift of the Prey to give you double range attack, but then you also have Break On Through to help you with the melee attack, but then later on you take like Consume Stamina and Ending Fight, but then you also take like Use Every Part. You basically combine some of the cards from both sides to give you that like accurate strike sniper type of Drifter that's kind of like doing some targeted hit from range and doing some targeted hit from melee. It feels really good, you know, like if you can apply poison on an enemy first on 2 targets, then you can go in with an Ending Fight, hit both of them. feels good, right? You poison enemy first, and then you come in and do a consume stamina. You do a big heal or use every part. Like, there's so many good combinations between these drifter cards that I highly recommend you to experiment. But having said that, all my experimentation is on the damage dealing side. Okay, so I spent quite a long time talking about drifter cards now. Let's move on from the cards. Let's talk a little bit about perks. So of the 3 passive perks, I love Expanded Arsenal. This is almost one of the first perk I take. I think it competes in a slot with Ignore Item effect. I'll probably still take Ignore Item -1 effect first, but then I'm definitely picking up Expanded Arsenal next. The fact I can bring additional hand item into each scenario is great. Maybe this is time, let's just briefly talk about items. I don't normally talk about spoiled items, but here's your spoiler warning. So, starting items, I think I inevitably always start with Amulet of Life. I think I've talked about how good continuous health is and why you should take this item. In fact, you should be fighting other starting characters for this item because it's just so much more useful in your hand, which means that you don't want to get critted. So if you start with these 2, great, you've got your healing, you've got your damage mitigation, but then you're always still at a risk of being critted because you're not taking the Ignore Crit Helm. That makes Crude Hide Armor basically a guaranteed item for my drifter. In terms of hand items, because you can take in 3 hand items with Expanded Arsenal, I find Crew Spear to be an amazing pickup. So this, as a melee drifter, really helps you to deal with high retaliating enemies. And then these shields are also amazing. So because you can take 3 you have 3 hands basically, you can pick and choose like between these cards, things like Heavy Sword and Rain Hammer. You can really choose what kind of items you bring in. I think the shield obviously is self-explanatory. If you're getting cursed, if you're getting disarm, stun enemy, and think about if you're fighting against priests, if you're fighting against forest imps, reinforced shield is Chaos Demon. Reinforced shield is just fantastic. Ice Race is another good example where this might come in really good. But then equally like Rain Hammer, bring in remember this is during your attack ability. It doesn't say during your melee attack ability, which is what you think it should say. So if you're doing like a ranged attack, double target with, like if you do Fierce Barrage round 1 with Deadly Shot to apply poison, hey, throw the hammer at the enemy. You are now muddling all the enemy as well. Reducing that incoming damage in that dangerous first room is just amazing. I mean, I find Rain Hammer to be great. The only downside is you need Axe Nut to craft it. Because you have the 3 hand, you can afford to bring this in. Heavy Sword, I mean, obviously this is just for the melee drifter, but because you got extra hand, you can bring Heavy Sword, you can bring Poison Dagger, and you can bring Jagged Sword. There's just so many more options that open up because you have the extra hand. And then anything like potion-wise, again, I don't normally talk about it. Renewing Potion is great because you got 3 items you bring with your hand, and because you've got your Amulet of Life, this could refresh this, allowing you to heal yourself for 6 HP in the same turn. At the same time, it can refresh your spear, allowing you to do another attack across the board against your high retaliating enemy that you want to approach in melee. So this can refresh your armor. In particular, I find often I'll be refreshing my armor and my Amulet of Life so that I can quickly go back up to 6 hit points and having 2 more armor to reduce incoming damage. So very good defensive item. And because this is very often the first potion you pick up, because Rockroot and Snow Thistle both appear, are the only herbs that appear in scenario 1, often your party will be crafting this as your first potion, and I think this absolutely should be going to your drifter if the drifter has Amulet of Life equipped. Obviously, healing potion will be a heal 5 with continuous health. Power potion is great. I mean, just great across all types of characters, but in particular late game drifter with cards like Against All Odds. Power potion is absolutely amazing. Frenzy potion is basically attack 4 with crushing weight, so amazing too. I think, again, I don't normally talk about potions, but these are definitely some of the earlier crafting items that are really good with the drifter. Yeah. I think in terms of items you can buy, I think Poison Dagger and Jagged Sword explains themselves. Weighted Net is also particularly good because you got 3 hands. You can bring this in and bring a shield, for example. Whereas other characters don't have that ability, and this will be really good for your ranged. You can immobilize people. Imagine you start with, like I said, you start with like Fierce Barrage, you into Poison, into like Rain Hammer, and you can immobilize 1 enemies. Like that would just reduce incoming damage so much for the team. Okay, so yeah, I love Expanded Arsenal, and I think you should play with it as soon as you get a chance to. Persistence is kind of good for me, like mid-ish. I think if you're playing ranged, you probably want to get Persistence a bit earlier because you definitely struggle with rewinding your tokens. With the melee side, sort of midway through your perk sheet, I will start thinking about taking it. It is 2 ticks, so definitely I think if you're playing melee, some of these ones will be better early on. But yeah, later on, Persistence is great, and you should be long resting most of the time because again you have 3 hand items that you probably won't be refreshing constantly. So yeah, Persistence definitely pays off because it's just very natural for you to be long resting. Scavenger I really find is not super useful. I wish it was, like I said earlier, I wish it was just discard up to X loot cards. I think that would be just great, and it would make looting much more useful for the Drifter. Why is it 2 cards? I don't really know. So yeah, some scenarios I play so much to the primary objective, I'm not even looting that much, and then this becomes not useful at all. So yeah, I don't know what this is for as it stands, because either I'm looting a lot of things or I'm not looting anything, and 2 cards is not often for me enough to find that random item that I'm looking for in the scenario. So not very valuable. I often don't take this. Attack modifier deck, I think we talked about a little bit, so I'm not going to repeat it. In terms of the ordering, I often take out the -2 first. That's definitely the biggest variance that you don't want to draw early on. And then -1, obviously. I think in terms of the preference for the next whole bunch, I actually think if you're playing ranged, you probably want the immobilize quicker because it's more useful, and the replacement quicker. Even though this sucks because you're replacing +1s with +0s, and it kind of feels awful, but it's actually really important for the range build to give you more flexibility on deploying more Persistence, because your power level really spikes if you can deploy like 3 Persistence ability on the range build versus in melee build you only really just need to deploy 1. But the range build has that more spikiness feel to it, but that requires you to have the logistics to back it up. So yeah, I actually think if you're doing the range build, taking these early is going to be helpful, and taking the +2 immobilize early. Occasionally you pull off an immobilize range attack and you feel great, but don't bet on it. For the melee, I think you leave these guys till later. I mean, you can play by ear, but I often find if you're being thrifty enough, you're not blowing through your tokens quick enough really to justify replacing your +1s. And I start to go down the chain. I actually just get the +3 first. I find that to be really useful. Occasionally draw it. I mean, it is 1 card out of like a big chunky deck, but occasionally you draw it and you feel really good because it kind of feels like drawing a crit sometimes. And then yeah, I would take out these zeros, although I don't find the Pierce to be reliable enough to make anything out of it. It's more just to thin my deck, because I want to draw into some of the better cards in my deck, in particularly this +3. And thinning out the pushes as well. The self-heal can be tricky because sometimes you have because Continuous Health is not one of those tracks you rewind often. So if you draw a +1 heal on self, sometimes you don't even want to take it because you don't want to eat up a random token. And again, because there's only 2 of them, like if there were more of them, then you can more reliably bet on this happening, then you can plan ahead. But often there's only 2 of them, I don't plan ahead around these, so that when they happen, sometimes they're not that useful. So actually, I don't rate the heal oneself rolling cards too great here. I think I much prefer just taking more of the damage card, like the +2 immobilize ahead of it, even if I'm playing the melee drifter here. And of course, ignore scenario effect. I actually find this to be quite good. Sometimes starting the game with poison and brittle, which is really, really annoying, because especially you need a turn to set up. And when you're setting up, you're not really wanting to heal, and you don't want to waste your precious amulet of life on just removing a poison. That just feels bad. So yeah, ignoring the scenario effect is good. I take that early and I feel good about it every time it applies. Your masteries, I think both of these are quite easy to do. Ending a scenario with character tokens on last slot for persistent abilities, I would do it early. Scenario 1 is a good place to be doing it, even on +3, because the later you do it, the more likely you're going to tank your scenario and all your friends going to hate you. Just remember that once you've done all 4, and I find like the 4 you want to do is probably sustain momentum, precision aim, crushing weight, and then probably continuous health. That's probably the 4 easiest one to do, because all 4 you can have some kind of control over it, and then you can use cards like Fortitude early to help you move your token 2 slots forward. As long as you're being pretty sensible with it, get them set up, get them to the last slot, and then just stand there and just long rest. Don't do anything else. Just tell your team, I'm down here, I'm doing my mastery, just move on without me, and hopefully they finish the scenario without you before you exhaust, and then you can get this one down early. Never perform move, ability, or attack with value less than 4. I recommend you do it in a scenario where it's fairly short, simply because if you have to move, you have to do one with value of 4 or greater, and same with attack. And then you have to do at least one every round. I think if it was just one of the other 2, that would be much easier. Given the fact that you have to do at least one every round, it's quite hard. Sequencing then is you must do crushing weight first, and then do probably a move 4 with like deadly shot. And the next round you can maybe do sustain momentum and then attack. Because then now every card is a move 4 and every card is attack 4. But then what you're really giving up on this difficulty level is, whilst this is a good opening to take heat of your team, you are then going to get hit and you have no way of healing yourself because you are deploying sustained momentum. So I will highly recommend you do this only in a short scenario where there aren't many turns where you have to play around this condition. Remember, because you have to do one every round, you can't actually long rest, because when you long rest, you're not moving nor you're attacking. So this will be a short rest only scenario for your drifter, and yeah, you are gonna put yourself under a lot of strain if you can't refresh all your items that help you a lot. I mean, drifter is really the type of character that needs the item to supplement the move set for it to achieve maximum efficiency around this token minigames. If you are not able to do that, you're really gonna struggle. So think of this as like a short scenario where it's less than 10 rounds or maybe 12 rounds, and you can really do some flash in the pan stuff and then get out. Great scenario. Otherwise, be careful with trying to do this. Okay, I think I've not talked long enough. I think the only thing left to talk about is the solo scenario. The solo scenario for Drifter is really, really hard. I didn't do it in my most recent playthrough. I have done it with a Drifter on +3. You have to be a very high level Drifter at level 9 with a lot of the late prosperity items. Otherwise, it's incredibly difficult. So maybe in the future I'll record a video demonstrating how that might be done on +3 difficulty. But I think for now, I'm going to tell you that it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. The item is great, but if you want to try it on +3, you're going to have a lot of headaches. So there is my very, very long Drifter analysis. I hope you enjoyed it. My throat is parched and it's about to die, so I'm going to drift off. But I think to conclude, as a Drifter, be a thrifter, be brave, and be the reliable friend with the club and the bow, filling in the gap for your team. And remember, number 4 is your lucky number, so be happy every time you see 4 anywhere in the game, including on your attack numbers. and enjoy running away at 4 spaces, 4 hexes every round. So there it is. So another insane and deadly and unfair guide done, and I wonder which card will be next. So look out for that. Thanks very much, and I'll see you guys next time.